Standing 463 feet above the virtual sea level tonight, Watkins Glen plays host to an event where the stakes are mile high. 10 sim centers over 8 states are participating in this across-the-country event. $4,000 our prize pool and $1,600 to the eventual race winner to determine who is the very best with a brand new Ford Mustang GT3s. We've assembled the top drivers throughout the United States. 10,000 plus laps have been taken, countless hours spent in preparation, and tonight, Virtual2Reality TV, in collaboration with FTN Broadcasting, present to you the eMustang Series National Finale. Welcome back to Schuyler County, New York. Watkins Glen International, the place to be, and tonight a 26-lap final feature will determine who ends up with our top prizes, $4,000 to spare, and already a value of more than $3,000 in prizes has been given away, and we're looking forward to finding out who ends up with that overall top prize at the end of night. Welcome to Virtual Reality TV. This is our very first broadcast and our very first national event, and I'll be your very first host on the channel. David Kreutz commentating and producing from FTN Broadcasting. Tonight, this is an event that is going on throughout the country. Many a time we see sim racing from someone's house or someone's place of residence, regardless of whether or not they live there. Tonight, it's a little bit different. Drivers are representing sim centers across the country, from California to New York and everywhere in between. 29 drivers have answered the call with the fastest lap times all throughout the United States. And tonight, we get to meet all of which. First and foremost, let's talk about the sim centers which are sending drivers into this prestigious event. With 5 drivers in tonight's race, first and foremost, we have to mention what's going on in Illinois. Sim Racing Chicago having the quickest time set overall by Matt Busa. They've got the strength in numbers. 5 drivers of theirs will be in this race tonight. Additional sim rigs, of course, are going to be found all throughout. Redmond, Washington is sending 1 driver, and that will be Gripworks Racing. You've got also Concord, California, Drive Sims tonight. You've got Woodland Hills, California, Circuit Sim Racing. New Braunfels, Texas has Oasis coming into play. And you've got Springfield, Missouri, the Flying Lap. Also, in conjunction with Missouri, we also have Berkley, Minnesota, Super Lap. You're looking at 2 other drivers right now in a little bit of a drafting tandem. New York is sending 2 simulator centers. Holbrook, New York, Skip Barber Racing, and Send It Sim Racing from Getzville. This is an international event, the likes of which we have never seen in sim racing competition. And these drivers are pioneers standing on the grounds of Watkins Glen, knowing that history is to be made tonight. No matter who comes out as a winner, this race will of course set the table not only for the rest of the year, but for perhaps the rest of sim racing history. 5 minutes left in final practice. 25 drivers have registered so far, 29 qualified, and sim racing across the country waiting for a race like this. You can see here Daniel Simpson, who's in that number 17. Drivers assigned numbers tonight by their quickest lap time. The top 30 drivers given an opportunity to qualify, 29 of which made available for this race, and prizes were given away even throughout that initial period in qualifying. First and foremost, we will talk about the fastest driver. He's donning the number 1 tonight, and that will be Matt Busa. He's racing for Sim Racing Chicago. They've sent 5 drivers, and they have the fastest 2 based on qualifying time. Right now, Matt is on pit road, but his lap time blistering, a 107.47 across this 2.45 mile circuit. And as a result, Matt has already won a prize worth $3,000, an iRacing VIP membership, courtesy of the lovely folks at iRacing Motorsports Simulations. Well, tonight, Matt Busa already going to come away a winner, but he's also the favorite, perhaps, to come away with the prize of $1,600, which goes with victory in the main feature, and he will be able to come away with almost a clean sweep of the big prizes, both in qualifying and race conditions. Russell Soto there, a little bit too aggressive through the bus stop. He'll have to go down a pit road once again. Holden Rowe also going to be on the circuit. We additionally had ourselves a secondary prize won by Dakota Fripp. Fripp not with us at the moment. We'll talk a little bit more about Vista Ford's participation in this event, as not only is it international, or rather throughout the states with drivers and sim centers, we also have sponsors coming aboard making everything possible. And tonight, a celebration of all those who have continued to support and contribute to sim racing success. And right now, Holden Rowe, one of the final drivers, taking extra times. Fans, of course, coming from throughout the country as well. Colleen Freeman in the chat room, watching from Buffalo, New York. Thank you for stopping by. Mr. Michael, Jason Short, also coming through. We'd love to hear from the fans tonight. This is what it's all about. The best drivers on the biggest stage, and I'm sure there's a lot of fan support for each and every one of which. If you're here tuning in, supporting a driver, let us know. Right now, only one driver taking times, Holden Rowe, the rest of which are going to be on pit road. So we have a chance now to learn a little bit more about how drivers approach Watkins Glen. First and foremost, it'll be that number 28 going up through the S's. This track based on momentum, and it comes through with that first 90-degree turn where drivers make the decision how they're going to approach the lap. Usually, it's all about getting that first good exit, because the S's brings you up to a speed of about 160 on your way to the bus stop here. It looks like Holden going to be very careful not to go out spinning like what we just saw a few minutes before, but you have to attack the curbs as well. Watkins Glen most recently remodeled on iRacing in 2021 to be as lifelike as possible. This is the most realistic rendition of the track on any platform, and so drivers have to understand with a one-to-one detail. Attention to detail sometimes brings more challenges, and the elevation profile is as realistic as it can get, from a slightly less high degree of banking when you go by that pit entryway to the curbs attacking you and almost sending you up the track. And you can see the bumps on your way into that first turn, the 90 degree, which sets up your lap. If you're good here, you should be good all the way, as long as you don't make a mistake through that bus stop. It's a fast track, one of the fastest road courses all throughout the country, and some drivers might consider it the super speedway of road racing. Nevertheless, it's prestigious, and that's exactly the reason it is the very first track chosen here by Virtual2Reality TV for an international event the likes of which has never been replicated. Matt Busa also right now taking to the track. He's got the fastest lap in this practice session, but not by a convincing amount. Only 0.004 of a second separate he and Paul Darling as it stands, and Matt may be trying to elevate himself here. There's a 10-minute qualifying session coming up, so a lot of time to get those quick laps in. Practice is not going to be the be-all, end-all. We have qualifying coming up, and then 3 heats. Our format for tonight, it's going to be rigorous, and by the time we get to that main race, 9 drivers were already going to be eliminated. So 20 drivers will make the main, and it's going to come down to which one of those will be the driver with victory at the end of 26 final laps. We'll talk format a little bit more as we approach our qualifying session. Matt Busa right now, in the final 5 seconds, looks to be the quickest of which. His lap time, fast, a 1:07.141. Once again at the top of the charts, Matt Busa, qualifying champion in the open round. Looks like he's already got his sights set on that top position again. Matt Busa, fastest in first practice, and so we move on to second qualifying. Jeff Marble coming in from Send It Sim Racing, Buffalo, New York. New York represented twice over, 1 station on the island and 1 a little bit further upstate. Skip Barber going to be down low, and Send It Sim Racing up high. One of only 2 states to see that multi-sim center representation. And from coast to coast, we have New York and California both sending a double-up number of drivers and participants. Since we have a little bit of time now, 10 minutes of qualifying, let's take a look at your overall roundup for this event. And first and foremost, you can see the fastest times taken by all the drivers in this field. Now, with these 30 being those that qualified, they move on to this 10-minute qualifying session, which determines which heat they end up in. We have 3 equally distant 9-lap heats. 4 drivers will advance to the feature race from each of which will give us our first 12. So 10 minutes per heat, 9 laps per heat as well. 4 drivers will advance to the main in each of which. Then you have your consolation race. It's another 9-lap feature, and this one gives more drivers a chance to make it in, but it's also more intense. 12 minutes, so a little bit more time will be provided, and 8 drivers will make it in to round out that 20-driver field. Consolation is last chance. Expect drivers to be a little bit more aggressive, take more chances, and perhaps be a little bit riskier with the way they approach things. Lastly, but certainly not least, 26-lap feature, 30 minutes on the clock for drivers, and it will be a race against time and against the field. The fastest drivers will prevail to make it in, and those who haven't made mistakes before, they're going to be tested. Expected to be an intimidating experience for every driver, because tonight, drivers do not have the luxury of being alone at their houses. They're going to be alongside their competitors for the most part anyway. Up to 5 drivers are going to be in the same room together. That's Sim Racing Chicago with 5, some of which maybe not sending all too many, but still as proud as ever to have their fastest getting set to go for qualifying. You can see there Matt Busa warming up his tires for the first of his 2 laps. And it's fitting that we now watch the fastest driver in qualifying trying to go and seal the deal for the pole in any one of the 3 heats. Liz Lalone for Berkley, Michigan. Super lap coming in. They've sent multiple drivers in their very distinct all-white machines tonight. Check out on the top of your screen who's who when it comes to sim rigs. You're going to notice that the logos will be placed and it will not instead be driver numbers. Every driver is going to be given a chance to represent their sim station. Sim Racing Chicago has their emblem. Super Lap has theirs as well. 2 laps on the table for each and every. Right now, Rodolfo Vargas with the fastest time, a 107.968. That's what we're seeing right now as the top time, but Cullen Brown immediately knocks it down, 0.4 of a second improvement, and the number 23 for Oasis Sim Racing moves up rapidly into that top spot. Expect the gap to be marginal throughout the entire field. Even if you have that pole position temporarily, by no means is it going to stick all the way. And right now, it looks like Cullen Brown having it by just 0.4 of a second. Not a safe margin by any means. Expect that to change as the night goes on in these next coming minutes. Cullen Brown still with the provisional pole of the first 6 drivers that have taken a time. You see Rafael Freelander gets up to 7th, and Matt Busa again jumps up in a 1st. Busa, if you are someone who keeps up with sim racing, you might know the name, but you might not know that Matt Busa does have professional road racing experience in simulation racing. From 2013 up to 2021, Busa was a driver in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series, and he might be known best for that venture, in which as recent as 2021, he came 5th in the championship standings against the best drivers in oval competition. But as you can see, we're turning right tonight. However, Matt Busa is also well equipped for such a venture. We'll talk a little bit more about these drivers and their histories as the night goes on. Busa right now quickest by 22 thousandths of a second. Cullen Brown is still going to be P2, although Cullen has completed his run quicker than most every other driver. Maybe some other drivers taking their time to figure out whether or not the forecast is in their favor. Weather will change throughout tonight's race, and right now, track temperature is scorching, 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Relative humidity is going to be low, though, coming in at only now 27%. Tully Fisher goes in the pit road after his first lap. It's going to be 10th place right now for Fisher. And right now, if you are the first driver, you'll be the pole sitter for Heat 1. If you're the second driver, you'll be pole sitter for Heat 2. Your third, you'll be the pole sitter for Heat 3, and then so on and so forth. 4th place would go into Heat 1, 5th would go into Heat 2, 6th into Heat 3. Drivers are going to be divided by 3 for tonight's race. and we're going to see a lot of separation here, so maybe some of the best drivers won't even get to see each other until the main feature. Busa right now would be paired up with Cullen Brown and Kevin Beal and Daniel Simpson. Someone like Nate Olson will be paired up with then Will Salisbury, Rodolfo Vargas, and Rafael Freelander, just to name a few. But as the lineup continues to change, those numbers will change as well. Jack Freeman right now on the way. I believe we have some fan support for Freeman tonight, and for Send It Sim Racing, upstate New York has their representative, and first and foremost, it'll be Jack Freeman now, taking it for his very first lap. Take a ride on board right now with the number 19 and see exactly what he's doing. Rapid lap time is being set by every driver. Jack Freeman right now looks like this lap will be in the 108 range, so going to be very serviceable. Should be able to put him in contention for a top 10 lap, and if this lap doesn't do the trick, keep in mind every driver has a second chance, so this might not be the most important lap for all those we're looking at here. Instead, they're going to be eyeing up what is yet to come. 107.768, so that's going to exceed expectations. Jack Freeman with a great first lap here, and now he's on his way for his second. Freeman on the way up the S's. Additionally, Holden Rowe going to be on the move here in the 28th seed, coming in from open qualifying. Holden, one of the underdogs here, and those numbers might not mean everything because drivers got 40 minutes to set their times. They were able to make it into their respective sim centers and get that practice in. For some of these drivers, they got their laps in quickly. Others, well, they took the full 40 minutes, and maybe it was their first time ever hearing about this event, which means drivers have practiced ever since that point. Don't expect a driver who had 28th place speed to continue to have 28th place speed. Everyone's going to be even tighter now that they've gotten that chance to sort of prepare themselves for what is yet to come. This is what it's all about here, and I think the question more so becomes how much quicker has a driver gotten now that they've gotten that further preparation. Holden up to 15th, and 18 drivers have taken the time, so it looks like Holden not in bad standing with still one more lap to go. Andrew Davis, more the same. Both drivers are making it up the S's at the very same time. And you can see the rapid ascent in speed from under 100 miles an hour on the entry into turn 1 to a speed of north of 165 on the way into the bus stop. 60 miles an hour gain in the fastest mile of the track. Everything else, it's mostly what comes down to that first turn. It's all about building momentum and preserving it. Andrew Davis right now trying to take a crack, but currently Matt Busa has the Heat 1 pole, Park Darling has the Heat 2 pole, and Nate Olson has pole for Heat 3. That's the way they roll so far, but Davis going to go sliding much slower, keeps it together, but that second lap is going to be do or die now, so I think Davis will come down to pit road. Drivers do have the opportunity to go in without penalty, but I don't think for Andrew there will be enough time. There's now less than 1 minute and 10 seconds left, so Davis will depopulate the track, and Mark Rivera now is taking some extra practice. Every other driver has decided to leave the circuit. Mark Rivera, well, instead has decided to go under that Go Bowling Bridge once again and take a few more laps. Tire wear perhaps going to prove critical if these drivers are not experienced just yet. Well, they've got to become so. 109 for number 5 of Mark Rivera, 109.724. Compared to his best lap, a 107.989, nearly 2 seconds of fall off, so really not the best there for the driver of the number 5, but I figure Mark right now trying new things and experimenting. Don't expect these drivers to take the same approach in the heat race, even if they have 10 minutes of time in both sessions. It's a completely different ball game, and so it looks like now Mark Rivera is going to get off the track as well, and qualifying has concluded. Now with times completely taken, 15 seconds left and no other driver attempting, every driver has in one way or another made their mark, set their lap or decided not to. and a convincing trend has started to appear. Based on hot lap speed once again, Matt Busa in the number 1 will take pole position for the initial heat. Paul Darling second quickest, and third quickest then is going to be right behind, and that is going to be Nate Olson. Fourth place is Cullen Brown on the hot sheets, but keep in mind, these times at the bottom of your screen are overall. Drivers are now divided into 9-lap heats, and even if you were quick compared to a specific group of drivers, now you have to learn how to race against your competition who's across the country from you. Thousands of miles. In some cases, separate these drivers. In most cases, that's at least a few hundred. But now, you're going to meet each other for the very first time, and this is what it's all about. The best competition. Now getting a chance to go head-to-head. This is all what it comes down to. 9 laps, 10 minutes per heat, and taking a look through those fast times will very familiar faces all throughout. Going to take a little bit of a break here. It looks like qualifying temporarily suspended to ensure that every driver is with us in this event. Taking a look at a lot of our drivers here, well, 11 rows of which going down to the super lap drivers of Russell Soto and Tyler King. We're going to take a pause here and make sure that every driver is with us and make sure the session is intact. So Heat 1 is currently on hold. And in the meantime, we'll talk a little bit more about Watkins Glen and what's going on at this track. Watkins Glen International. We're taking it to the 2.45 mile configuration, and many might be familiar with this track and Watkins Glen International, of course, in its presence in the NASCAR Cup Series, NASCAR Xfinity Series, or even for a short period of time, the NASCAR Truck Series. But this track has seen decades of use even before NASCAR came to town and before IMSA or any modern endurance series came to town as well. Starting in 1949, Watkins Glen, the town, was one of the very first areas, not just very first circuits, but very first towns as a whole to experience racing after the Second World War. The initial Watkins Glen Street Circuit was significantly longer, coming in at north of 4 miles. Now, of course, consolidated into a smaller piece of land, albeit still, if you walk across Watkins Glen in person, this is a huge track, and we're using a small configuration. 2.45 miles eliminates what's known as the boot, and this keeps us to our NASCAR Cup Series configuration with only 10 turns. Elevation of hundreds of feet across the track from that major descent down from the first turn to the 90, and then you go up the S's once again through the carousel, which is what we're using, not the boot tonight, but that sweeping carousel. It's high speeds, sometimes high attrition. It all depends on, of course, what you look at it. For Watkins Glen, some drivers prioritize that speed, others prioritize seeing how other drivers approach it. Racecraft is a necessity when everyone is almost at the exact same speed, and it's very hard to excuse the fact that this is a track that fosters a close racing environment. Now, in a few moments' time, we will get every driver rounded up once again for qualifying to continue and for our opening heat, but taking a few minutes away to ensure that every driver is here with us. That's all we're doing for the time being. So let's talk a little bit more about what has happened leading into today's event. Matt Busa getting the overall qualifying victory and a $3,000 membership courtesy of our friends at iRacing Motorsports Simulations. This VIP membership encompasses all of iRacing's content, every car and every track, with more than 16 years of history in simulation racing and more than 60 years of history with iconic Formula One cars such as the Lotus 49, which went to this circuit in the late 1960s, to modern day racing. You see the modern Mercedes W13, you've seen the NASCAR Cup Series cars of the day, and now the brand new Ford Mustang GT3, which is on display tonight. Dakota Fripp gets the Vista Ford Fastest Lap Award, a 107.961, very serviceable time, coming in just a half a second under Matt Busa. On the last day, Dakota won this overall prize, and for that, Dakota Fripp recognized getting the job done, a free oil change as the prize, and you can see Dakota's reaction right now on your screen, just what Dakota needed. So, a victory for Fripp, however, not here tonight right now, and Matt Busa, as quick as he was in open qualifying, looks to be once again the fastest driver in this session again. We'll find out whether or not he stands on that opening heat pole position in just a few moments. And we'll step away briefly and get a word from our associates at iRacing Motorsports Simulations. Thank you for tuning in on Virtual2Reality TV, hosted by FTN Broadcasting. The eNASCAR eMustang National Finale will be coming at you very soon. We'll return after the following messages.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head to head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
This message is brought to you by the rebrand of Throttle Graphics and Designs. This publication may not be reposted without the authorized written consent of Throttle Graphics and Designs. NASCAR Camping World Ford F-150. NASCAR Xfinity Ford Mustang. NASCAR Cup Series Next Gen Ford Mustang. Arca Menards. This has been the publication of the redesign and rebranding of Throttle Graphics and Designs. This message may not be reposted, republicated, or rebroadcasted without the authorized written consent of Throttle Graphics and Designs. Thank you, and thanks for your time.
Just a few moments away from bringing back coverage here from the virtual Watkins Glen International, and this is what it's all about. Heat 1 going to be coming at you within 5 minutes. Qualifying has been put back together. Every driver is with us now, all 29 of which, and it is a star-studded field from eNASCAR talents such as Matt Busa, Chris Wetz, and most importantly, of course, we got some drivers in between who don't have that experience going up against the veterans. Sometimes you tend to look at those veterans with the experience as the preferable drivers, and I'm sure there's good reason to. Busa's looking really fast, and that entire Sim Racing Chicago organization, well, they have been as quick as a lightning so far in our first practice session tonight and in first qualifying. But unfortunately, thanks to some connection errors, some server failures on the back end, we are returning once again and giving drivers a second chance to go for fast times. So we're back at Watkins Glen and with a very familiar look, but it's a slightly different session. Qualifying has been reset and 5 minutes are now left on the clock for drivers to make that impression. You'll see Kevin Beal in the number 16 right now, Nick Stratus in the number 12, and Cullen Brown in the number 29. All familiar from just a few minutes ago, and right now Cullen is on that provisional pole. Gap between he and Tyler King for first and second is 3/1000ths, as a matter of fact. So very narrow margins once again, and the question becomes, does Sim Racing Chicago have a chance to really strike back here, or is this going to be maybe a hatchet in that momentum? Perhaps the other teams are going to get a chance to stick up to the front of the field. Matt Busa right now going for another time though, and Matt finding himself now it looks like recorded in the number 14 rather than the number 1, as Virtual Reality TV, our admin, is coming once again. Matt Busa, well, reorganized is still with Sim Racing Chicago, and will reflect that immediately on your timing screen. If you look up to the head of your screen, well, every driver, for the most part anyway, is sorted by their sim station. And Matt Busa, of course, proud to represent Sim Racing Chicago, has done a wonderful job of which first lap gets him up into third. So he's looking like one of the top competitors already, and it looks like he's only got 2 more spots to go to really put himself up in there and hold fort with the pole again. Still in due time, though, he's got it collected on this lap. Momentum made up through that opening corner, and the S's again from the bus stop. He goes down to a speed of 107 miles an hour, losing about 60 miles an hour in all of 600 feet. That's rapid. And right now, Busa making it through that carousel, right on board for the final moments of his lap. And Matt Busa up in the wall will not be able to replicate his top time, and coming into the Go Bowling Bridge, Busa in trouble. And so right now, Cullen Brown finds himself with that provisional pole, and it looks like, well, he's in a good spot to hang on to it. Let's see what Cullen Brown can do for the time being. At number 29 team, well, looks like he's got the top spot, and he might just have a chance at holding on to it. Checkered flag is going to fly on the session momentarily here, and for Cullen Brown, he was quick in that opening qualifying session. Right now, he's looking that much better, and it looks like with 3 minutes left, he's got the top time, a 108.076 as it stands. Busa would still be the pole sitter in Heat 3, mind you, so just because he doesn't get that overall top time doesn't mean he has no chance at leading. It's just going to be slightly different here, as you see Nate Olson in that number 2, then you got Paul Darling in the number 4. Right now for Paul, super lap going to be white and black, striking paint scheme. Not a lot of teams bringing that sort of distinct contrast flair. Some gold there for Sim Racing Chicago. Skip Barber noticeably using multiple colors, fastest lap, grip works, all of the above, bringing more refined paint scheme, should you say. It's a little bit different right now for Super Lap, and they're making their purpose and their mission loud and clear. Show up, get noticed, and go for the win. And I'm sure every team right now wants to achieve exactly that. And for the time being, well, it looks like Mark Rivera has a chance to improve this time from 17th on the timing sheet. This lap will take him up to 13th. Paul Darling and Cullen Brown additionally are able to best the time set by both Matt Busa and Tyler King alike, and Darling stands as a pole sitter with 1/10 of a second as an advantage so far. Mr. Michael in the chat room as well, thank you for stopping by. 93 viewers right now, and I'm sure that you guys are all here for at least 1 or 2 drivers or sim stations. Shout out your local sim station from New York to California, anywhere in between, and the driver you're rooting for will shout you out on the broadcast all race long. We'd love to hear, of course, more from the fans. Tonight is a wonderful night for sim racing, and tonight where we celebrate sim racing across the country. Nate Olson right now up into 5th, and looks like SRC coming through 4th and 5th right now on the timing sheet. You see Dakota Fripp winning that Vista Ford prize earlier in the week, and it's great to see Dakota with us now and representing Circuit Sim. Dakota now getting back onto the track. Great to have one of our earlier prize winners getting the job done and returning back to the circuits. Circuit Sim Racing collaborating with Vista Ford for their 50th year anniversary since 1974. Vista Ford has been serving the local community, and for Circuit Sim Racing, their priority, and of course they haven't been around for 50 years. Simulation racing is much newer, but at the same time there's that message and that purpose of serving the automotive community, and it's wonderful to see for Circuit Sim partnering with such a well-established brand as Vista Ford and the Ford Motor Company, where of course all eyes are on tonight with their brand new Mustangs. Dakota Fripp representing the both of them with a very classy paint scheme. Ford tends to bring out the great endurance paint schemes, whether or not it's a Mustang. Ford GTs in particular, and their quest of dominating Le Mans in the late 1960s. They won from 66 until 1969. That last win was the very first for the eventual king of Le Mans, Jackie Ickx, and Watkins Glen. It's an endurance track as well, and tonight it will be dominated by the Blue Oval. Heat 1 coming your way. Fastest time in this session taken by Paul Darling, the only driver to get under the 108 bubble. 9 laps are ahead of us here and now, and every driver is ready to roll. Starting grid now being formed. Russell Soto will be the first driver to enter in, and Russell going to be representing Super Lap. Going to be a very, very shortened and abbreviated pace lap here to give drivers the time to finish this race. 10 minutes, 9 laps. We are going to be on the bleeding edge of finishing our heats, so every second's going to matter. You're going to want to be ahead coming to the white flag and at the checkered flag as well. There's no room for error in a race this short. You spin, you're basically out of contention. You'll have to go to the last chance qualifier. You end up loose, you're going to lose most likely 2 or 3 spots at the minimum, and when only 4 drivers advance from each feature, 2 or 3 spots is major. That could be the difference between being second and firmly in and going down to 5th and being almost entirely out. Then for drivers who are even further back, it's almost a further death sentence on their chances of making it in. For some drivers, this is the best chance they have. For maybe someone like Paul Darling, who's now seeing behind him multiple of his Super Lap teammates, I don't think he's all too concerned. Matt Busa up front, he's got something to prove here, and he wants to show that perhaps the lack of success in second qualifying is more of a fluke, if anything. Jack Freeman also going to be with us here in the 19 seed. Jack, once again, we representing Sended Sim Racing, upstate New York. Freddie Toth going to be the 24th seed with fastest lap. Andres Luna, number 25 tonight, and that 25 team going to be with Circuit Sim Racing, and that will be reflected accordingly right now. Circuit Sim sending multiple of their best, and of course, while tonight we mentioned Dakota Fripp, it's multitude of drivers on that team getting the chance to go at it and fight against the best all throughout the sim racing world. Andres Luna going to be starting in 8th, and Mitchell Huey, the only driver for Gripworks, is 9th and last on the grid as we speak. So underdogs and some underrepresented sim centers getting their chance against the best of the best. Strength in numbers, strength in speed. Those are the 2 biggest themes we've seen so far in qualifying. We're going to learn a lot from this first heat. No matter who wins, no matter who's successful, no matter who ends up in an incident, these first 9 laps will set the tone for every lap from here on out. Time to get busy as the iRacing pace car goes down a pit road. $1,600 to win, but first, of course, you got to advance into the main feature. First 4 drivers in this heat will make it there. Green flags out again. Paul Darling will lead the way into the 90, and the entire field of 9 drivers well put together just behind. Super Lap pulling away early. It's going to be now Paul Darling up to first, and of the top 4 drivers in the transfer positions, 1, 2, 3 of which they're going to be right now Super Lap drivers. White and shades of color on the highlighted front and rear lighting. Well, right now it's going to be pretty in pink. Paul Darling up ahead. You've got the blue number 6 of Kevin Roll, and Russell Soto then third in this Super Lap train. Mark Rivera right now going to be on the bleeding edge of the battle to make it in. Jack Freeman is the first driver out, and right now Send It Sim Racing's one and only in this heat finds himself P5. No mistakes so far for anyone on this opening lap. Mark Rivera a 6th. Freddie Toth right now for fastest lap, battling against the Circuit Sim Racing number 25, and Mitchell Huey for Gripworks is the one and only driver set by that team. And admittedly, he's the only driver to be solo in this event, and that's a little bit of a disadvantage. Sometimes, of course, you have to acknowledge that the best drivers and best competition will be directly around you, but the drivers who have multiple sort of sim center teammates have someone to talk to about this race, someone who's nearby. For Mitchell Huey, he doesn't have any notebook to copy off of. Right now, this is the notebook, and he's writing, hopefully, as much as he can get down on the paper. For the time being, he is going to be 9th and last, but he's not significantly far behind. Gap between he and leader, 5 seconds, although it looks like his pace is now dropping back, and in only 2 laps, that's something you just cannot afford. Up at the head, Paul Darling, Matt Busa, Russell Soto, and Kevin Rold. Weather has slightly changed based on our session shift, but not in the favor of the drivers. Track temperature is now up to a staggering 129 degrees Fahrenheit. Ambient temperature is 78 degrees. So for all the virtual fans in the stands, I'm sure they're having a great time, but for all those on the track, it's not going to be easy. Tires are going to get slick, and they're going to get slick fast. For Lee Martinez in California, Mr. Michael representing and showing support, thank you again for tuning in. Paul Darling right now leads the way, and it looks like he's got his teammates right behind him. What's the catch? Matt Busa's the catch right now, and admittedly, he's not holding them up per se, but he's got them now understanding there's competition ahead. It's not going to be easy to get by Matt Busa, and they're sitting in transfer position, so the incentive to pass isn't really there. Maybe if it was the battle for 4th position, someone like Jack Freeman's placement, yes, there would be more reason to be aggressive, but right now, not so much. You can see shifting gears on the left side of your screen. 4th gear right now as we're into this opening heat. 3 laps of 9. Right now, shifting through the gears and making it up to 5th. It looks like you're going to see here the most extreme shift. Watch, 5th gear, down to 4th, down to 3rd, but only 2 gears going to be gone in between. These drivers decided to keep it very conservative when it comes to their gear shifting. It's a fixed setup for every driver here, so nobody's got an advantage when it comes to the equipment. It's the same car, it's the same setup. The only differences are going to be minute, and it's going to be how the sim centers decide to assemble their rigs, although these are all top-of-the-line experiences that are hosted throughout the country. Reminder, these drivers going side by side in the bus stop, well, that's a risky move, and that's Jack Freeman making it ahead of Mark Rivera. That's the pass for 5th, and Mark had to give. Jack Freeman decided to be a little bit more aggressive, and he will make his way around immediately. There's almost never room for 2, so luckily for Mark Rivera, he did not end up sliding. He actually kept good pace through that sector, and now he's going to be eyeing up Jack Freeman again, this time as the aggressor, and I'm sure now he's going to want to make a move to take that position right back. Freddie Toth is also going to be a 1/4 of a second behind here, and maybe a chance for him to enter the battle. Freddie is now within a 1/2 second of 5th place, although right now Jack Freeman is more than a second behind the super lap chain and their one Sim Racing Chicago friend. And that's going to be Matt Busa right now. Samurai in the chat room, also Magdalena looking to support that #1 seed. Matt Busa, fastest in qualifying, already winning an iRacing VIP award. His membership now fully immersed with every single car and track on the platform. What's next for Busa? Of course, eyeing up that $1,600 prize if he comes out as the overall race winner. Reminder, this race has a lot of money on the line. If you win, $1,600. If you're 2nd place, $1,000. 3rd, $600. 4th, $400. 5th, $240. 6th, $160. To the top 6 drivers, a total of $4,000 in cold hard cash. Right now, Matt Busa going to be eyeing up Paul Darling, and all of a sudden, Busa getting a run in the Go Bowling Bridge, going to be having that advantage into turn 1 and taping the apex on the inside. Busa delicately enters the corner, takes the apex and gonna force Paul Darling wide. This will bring Busa up to the head of the field, and mind you, this is gonna be the battle for the opening heat. And so if he wins this race, he collects the opening pole position for your feature. He might have not gotten the quickest time in qualifying, but now he's racing for it. 6 laps in and a 9, contact in the back of the field, we'll see it later. Busa now forced to the outside through the bus stop. One's gotta give, it'll be Matt Busa trying to go for a slide job, but no room. He'll have to eat the curbs, and it looks like now Russell Soto with further pressure. Mark Rivera, Andres Luna, they had an incident at the tail end, but it looks like things have not simmered down up in front as Busa tries to recuperate. Andres Luna, Mark Rivera, both down to pit road, and now it looks like their chance to make it into the main, it has ended. Mitchell Huey destroyed, the front end is gone, and Jack Freeman, more of the same. There was a major incident about a half minute ago. Take a look at this. Through the S's, destruction. 4 drivers got caught up in it, including Mark Rivera, who's not on your frame, and Jack Freeman of Send It, destroyed. Mitchell Huey of Gripworks, the one and only, he is destroyed. Andres Luna for Circuit Sim, and Mark Rivera of Oasis, all cataclysmic damage. And so, their heat is going to end prematurely, leaving us now with 5 drivers, even with a fighting chance at making it in. And right now, Freddie Toth is 8 seconds back on the leaders. Taking a look ahead to Paul Darling and Matt Busa, the bus stop is once again the center of attention. And we saw, of course, all throughout qualifying and practice, if you took it through that bus stop too hard, you wouldn't have any traction. Not only because the tires are going to get very squeamish and very slick fast, it's also because those curbs are going to lift you up and off the track. The curbs are slightly higher, about a foot or 2 at the very most above the circuit, so if you eat the curbs, which is to take all 4 tires and hop right over, when you come back down on the ground, that's thousands of pounds being put right back onto the track surface without any clear direction. And unless you're very good at managing things in the air, which iRacing is not a flight simulator, very tricky to do that, you're oftentimes going to be sent out of control without really any say for it. Right now, 3 of your top 4, Super Lap, Matt Busa, the only exception for Sim Racing Chicago. It's a team affair in Heat 1, and Sim Racing Chicago, they have 5 drivers, and it's a wonder that Matt Busa is alone right now facing up against the wrath of Super Lap. Mind you, they have 4 drivers, and 3 of which now in the same heat. It's almost the best case scenario. Matt Busa has just been the one driver throwing that wrench in the equation here, and 8 laps in of 9, he had a real good chance at leading 2 laps ago. Now there's a chance to go for it again. Let's see what Matt does here. He's in second, 3/10 back, and he's only about 3 miles away from the checkered flag in this opening heat. Let's figure out now what he decides to do with it. Will Matt be a little bit more aggressive, or will he lie back? Coming past the Jackie Stewart grandstands and onto the main straight once again. 1 lap to go. Barney the flagman will wave it. It'll be our last lap here for Heat 1. Top 4 drivers make it into your main and lock in without going through consolation. Busa with a very strong exit there out of the 90. The 2 Super Lap drivers, Russell Soto and Kevin Rold, they remain just behind, still watching as Busa gets that run up the hill. The draft will carry him up toward Paul Darling here. If Matt has any chance of going for the heat victory in the overall pole, it will come here and now. Looking low, Busa thinks once, thinks twice, and thinks better of it. Decides to lie back here, giving Paul Darling ample incentive to jump through those curbs, and that he will. Now, coming around the carousel once again, Paul Darling still advantageous. He's got his teammates behind him, so nothing to worry about besides that number 1. Darling now a left-hander and a right-hander. That will end this heat, and it will grant him the pole position, and it will grant Matt Busa only 4th on the lineup. Coming to the final turn for Paul Darling, no competition under the Gold Bowling Bridge, and a huge first heat victory for the number 4 of Paul Darling. Super Lap brings 3 of their 4 drivers into the main event, locking in, and Paul Darling wins the pole position for our main event. 26 laps, and as you saw tonight, track position mattering in the heat. And Paul Darling, now with the biggest advantage of all, he will lead the field to our green flag tonight. That's a huge win for Paul Darling, and not only the defense they had for Matt Busa, but also the race pace he had, as natural as it came, and looks like no trouble for him to hold off the rest of the field. Checkered flag will fly for your first heat, and it will be Paul Darling winning from Matt Busa. Russell Soto then going to be in third, and then Kevin Rold, P4. P5, Freddie Tothen. Andres Luna will come around to the start-finish line at 6th, albeit for the driver of this number 25, really little that can be done, and he'll have to, of course, settle for the last chance consolation. So it'll be Paul Darling moving on, as did his teammates Russell Soto, Matt Busa as well. Now it's time to move on to Heat 2. Cullen Brown will have the pole position for this one, and with them it'll be Nate Olson, Kevin Beal. It looks like Sim Racing Chicago once again represented. This time it will not be in the form of Matt Busa, but instead Nate Olson. You see him there in that number 2, and just behind him you're going to see Dakota Fripp. He's going to be with Vista Ford. Will Salisbury in the number 22. And tonight we'll be representing, and you can see right there, one of the sim rigs we have not talked about. One of the sim centers less mentioned. That will be Drive Sims in Concord, Carolina. Additionally, further on back, you have there, well, none other than Daniel Simpson, who's going to be representing Sim Racing Chicago. Then you, of course, have the number 7, Lee Martinez, going to be with Drive Sims as well. Finally, 2 drivers that we haven't mentioned yet. Raphael Freelander going to be with the Flying Lap, and the number 26 of Nikki Hayes with Circuit Sim Racing. So, 9 drivers? No, it'll be 10 for this one, but still 4 drivers will advance in a slightly bigger field with very similar level of talent. Cullen Brown has the provisional pole and will lead the field to green. What we learned from that first heat? Well, don't expect any major incidents up in front. If you're in 4th, ride in 4th, and the team game might prove valuable, especially for Sim Racing Chicago or Circuit Sim Racing, 2 teams that sent multiple drivers. iRacing pace car ducks down low. Cullen Brown is going to be the driver that leads the lane on the inside, and Nate Olson here may be looking to best his teammate Busa's performance. He finds himself up high. Green flag flies once again. Welcome to heat number 2, and Cullen Brown is going to lead down low, taking the apex into turn 1. Looking aboard now with Will Salisbury. You'll see that number 22 riding into the bus stop for Drive Sims in California. Coast to coast racing, we've emphasized it. We saw earlier with Jack Freeman in New York that from New York to California, there are sim centers throughout the country, and they're growing more and more in popularity, and an event like this is sure to spark that same notion. $7,000, the cash prize pool, and of course prizes as well, adding to that total. Matt Busa coming away with that VIP membership, and $4,000 for drivers to win tonight. Everyone going to be heavily motivated, and right now Cullen Brown doing a wonderful job as he finds himself up and ahead to lead this first lap. Nate Olson will duck down low. It's now going to be the number 2 looking for position number 1, the second fastest time in this event, taken by Nate Olson, and now he's going to find himself a leader in his heat, and a quick move. That's the first pass for the lead we've seen all night long, and it wasn't easy, but Nate Olson making it happen as he enters the 90-degree opening corner, and now coming up through the bus stop, momentum prevails, and the number 2's up and ahead. Sitting on that cutoff line, Will Salisbury is going to be in 4th. Keep your eyes on the driver in the 4th place spot as much as you keep your eyes on those in the lead. Up at the top of your screen, you'll see the driver and the simulating center that they are representing. Right now for Will Salisbury, he finds himself as the highest position driver representing his respective sim rig, and that's going to be in Drive Sim. They have multiple drivers in this heat, and you got Kevin Beal as well, not to mention Lee Martinez. 3 drivers, California based, who are teammates, and then, of course, you have Circuit Sim Center, and you've got Dakota Fripp running for Vista Ford, and Dakota also has some teammates, including Daniel Chung looking further back, and Nikki Hayes looking low now. Will Salisbury trying to make a move on Kevin Beal. This is the battle for third here, and side by side in the first corner, it looks like these drivers are going to have a little bit of contact, minor, and hopefully they keep it that way. One driver has to give. That's Dakota Fripp. Will Salisbury up top, Dakota Fripp down low. This is the battle for the transfer spot here, and Dakota, while pushed up high in the opening segment, now is going to rush through with the draft and get up and ahead of that number 22. Good job there for Dakota, making it up now into P4 and bringing Lee Martinez right there with. It looks like the Vista Ford is going to make it just outside of the podium. Kevin Beal goes through the grass. A little bit of lawn mowing as the 16 goes high. So Kevin Beal now going to sit in the transfer spot, but it looks like pressure increases as soon as he gets there. Here comes Lee Martinez, and it's going to be Lee, the 7th seed driver, up now into the 6th spot. Maybe looking for 5th, but Will Salisbury takes it back. So Drive Sim is going to be 5th and 7th right now. 4th, 5th, 7th, including Kevin Beal. Kevin now finds himself further behind on Dakota Fripp, and Dakota's making gains here. Look at how the Circuit Sim Racing number 11 has gotten up here further ahead of the pack, and now might be looking toward Cullen Brown and Nate Olson. Cullen is in second for Oasis Sim Racing, and you can see the vibrant colors, the neon pink and the bright blue. Those tones are going to be synonymous with Oasis all day long. They have multiple drivers, but only one of which is going to be in this heat. And so far, looks like Cullen Brown doing a good job representing Oasis, while Nate Olson is looking to bring victory back to Sim Racing Chicago. Kevin Beal right now is going to be in 4th. Will Salisbury is going to be in 5th. Daniel Simpson is P6 here. Every driver has gotten away in these first 4 laps without any incident. We saw some minor contact, but it didn't have any implications. Nikki Hayes and Daniel Chung are going to be far behind right now. Looking at Nikki for Circuit Sim Racing, he runs in 9th, and Daniel Chung is 10th and last. Circuit Sim Racing occupying the bottom 2 positions, so unfortunately for Daniel, not looking the best right now, and perhaps an opportunity to improve as the race goes on, but that would come if only there was an incident up ahead, and right now that looks rather unlikely. Single file all throughout, and we were expecting maybe to see some more aggression from the transfer battle, but now it looks like it's simmered down and drivers are finding their pace rather than really amping it up as the night has progressed. You see now bundles of 2 or 3 drivers in the draft together, breaking away from all those that they're around. Separation is going to be critical tonight. And as it stands, it looks like that Ford GT3 of Salisbury is going to back off. Silas Hill in the chat room asking about what's next to come. In between our Heat 2 and Heat 3 racing, we'll talk to you a little bit more about our next event. It'll be even bigger and even better than what you're seeing right now, with a larger prize pool to go with. Kevin Beal right now still remains in 4th, and Will Salisbury is just behind. If you look aboard with Salisbury, you'll see high stakes, and now there's minimal room for error. Now it looks like the 16 of Kevin Beal goes right down low into the 90. Side by side, loose, but Kevin's got momentum. Now can he carry it up through the S's? You saw that door banging side by side. Couldn't quite make it happen. And here now, Kevin's going to get a little bit rougher. Up top, Will Salisbury going to be right there with, and still 2 by 2. Entering the bus stop once again. 6 laps in out of 9. This is tricky racing. To understand, of course, whether or not someone's going to give, and it looks like an unforced error from the 16. Will Salisbury now looking for another chance. Let's see what he can do with it. Up high through the carousel. Not an easy place to go, but it looks like that's exactly where that number 22 will reside. Kevin Beal being given a run for his money now, and they've been side by side for the entire lap. Kevin still has not yet given up. As Dakota Fripp has gotten away, looks like Will Salisbury has taken the position, and Kevin Beal, for the time being, he'll have to lie back, at least temporarily. In Send It Sim Racing trying to send at least one driver in, and we're going to reflect the changes right now on your screen. Kevin Beal, not Drive Sim, but instead Send It Sim Racing. As it stands, the best driver, of course, for Send It Sim Racing is whichever of which gets into that main event. And right now, Kevin is hoping to be that one who makes the change and gets in. Unfortunately for the Freeman team earlier, involved in that catastrophic wreck which ripped away the front end. It really didn't go all too well for that team. And up top, well, Kevin Beal looks again. Will Salisbury going to bide his time and continue defending. And Daniel Simpson for Sim Racing Chicago also comes up and joins the fray as well. Contact up the track and hooked. Beal and Salisbury destroyed. And they'll go to the last chance qualifier. Kevin Beal taken up the track by Will Salisbury, and their chances to make the main in this race over. Daniel Simpson now holds the final transfer spot, and so does Dakota Fripp up in third. Talk about a major wreck. Let's get a replay here because that was massive. No yellow flag in these heats, but two drivers with great chances hooking up the track. Kevin and Will, well, they're going to go now to that last chance qualifier. It will be do or die for the both of them. And talk about an incident that we're never going to forget here. Luckily, nobody else got involved. They were racing rough for a few laps before that point. Here comes Salisbury down the pit road. Can't imagine those two are happy with each other. 8 laps out of 9, and right now the closest battle is still that for the race lead. Up and ahead, it's going to be Cullen Brown in second, and leading is Nate Olson. Nate has been leading this entire race short of the first lap, and for Sim Racing Chicago now, he's looking to hold down the fort and get the job done. A white flag is going to fly. This will be for the outside pole in the main race, which of course is going to come through as second place in the overall qualifying grid. White flag is out. 1 lap to go here for Nate Olson, and Cullen Brown just behind. Looks like he's still very close, but it doesn't look like he's going to be all too aggressive on this lap unless, of course, Olson makes a mistake. Looks like Sim Racing Chicago will be sending 2 more drivers into the main event. Daniel Simpson in that number 17. As you can see here, well, he's up in the 4th spot. He wasn't there beforehand, but all of a sudden, he's got that opportunity. He made it through the wreck, and attrition is what boosted his chances. Simpson, Olson, and Matt Busa, the first 3 drivers of 5 to race for Sim Racing Chicago, have made it into the main so far without having to consider the last chance qualifier. We'll see if that happens up next. For Circuit Sim Racing, they'll be sending Dakota Fripp, but right now the battle is between Oasis and Sim Racing Chicago for the win. SRC finished second in the last heat with Matt Busa, but it looks like they're going to get some immediate racing redemption here and a chance to start on the front row. Olson will lead the field through the final corner and under the goal bowling bridge once again, taking it right to the inside. SRC second in heat 1, first in heat 2 with another victory. Nate Olson collects the checkered flag, and so heat 2 comes to a close with a catastrophic wreck for 2 drivers. Kevin Beal, Will Salisbury ruin their chances. They'll go to the last chance qualifier. Cullen Brown, Dakota Fripp, and Daniel Simpson make it in. SRC send 2 additional drivers. Oasis and Circuit Sim Racing send 1 apiece. If you want to find out more about what's up next to come, Heat 3 is coming very soon, but when it comes to our next event, Laguna Seca, Ford Mustang GT3s, and a prize pool bigger than ever. Let's learn a bit more about what's up next for Virtual to Reality TV right now. If it isn't Watkins Glen, it's Laguna Seca. On the other side of the country, a very iconic track. And with $10,000 in cash prizes, well, that's what's up next come October. So stay tuned here on Virtual2Reality TV. Watkins Glen, the very first event all throughout the country with 10 sim centers, 16, including Canadian representation in just a month's time. So if you're getting excited about tonight's event, it's the first of many to come. Now, drivers are going to be lined up again for heat number 3. Sim Racing, of course, they're looking for a comeback tonight. Holden Henderson, Freeman Motorsports, Colleen Freeman in the chat room. Thank you once again for tuning in. Super Lap is going to be on the inside for the pole position, and Skip Barber with Nick Stathis is going to be sending a driver up to the top of the pylon for Long Island, New York. Got Chris Wetz then. He's going to be running tonight, as you can see, for Oasis. Then from there, you got Jerron Davis in that number 15, occupying that number 15 for fastest lap. Rodolfo Vargas is going to be with SRC, looking to be their 4th driver to make it in. Adam Billings with Circuit Sim. Andrew Davis is also going to be with us here. He's looking to do it for fastest lap as well. Green flags out there as the Super Lap number 10 of Tyler King leads the way. And Super Lap now looking to send their 4th driver into the main events. Back of the field gets away unscathed, but once again, it's going to be a very, very calm opening. The leaders, top 2, as you can see, already broke through. We're looking at the back half of the field right now, and you can see, well, tonight, he's going to be put in that number 31 machine, but representing fastest lap, that's going to be Andrew Davis. Just ahead of him, the final driver for Sim Racing Chicago. That's going to be Rodolfo Vargas coming up on a continuing battle. Jerron Davis and Chris Wett's going to be going at it here. And Chris, as it stands, seeing contact in the back. And Sim Racing Chicago has trouble. Their first driver that will not make it in on the main, Ryan O'Connor, with a major incident here. And it's going to be the number 18. Bad news, sliding out of the carousel. And of course, no cautions, no break in the action. So this is tricky. No chance to naturally recover here, and Ryan will be going to the last chance consolation as a result. O'Connor hooked up the track there, and it looks like contact with one of the fastest lap drivers, and so Ryan's going to have to do things the hard way to get up into the main event. Ryan does get away under his own power, yes, but contact with a Holden Rowe makes things tricky here. Now, side by side, Holden is in the tail end of the field looking to make up a spot. That's going to jeopardize both drivers and their chances, of course, to make things happen for the main event. There's Ryan O'Connor down to pit road. Meanwhile, focus is up at the head of the field. Skip Barber Racing School in the chat room. Nicholas Stathis right now representing Skip Barber in Long Island, New York. And if you're one of those drivers or, of course, fans who knows the history of iRacing, you may know a little anecdote from 2006, which brings us back to when Dave Kamer was one of the very few employees at iRacing. After the dissolution of Papyrus Racing Games, Dave Kamer, well, he ended up learning a lot more about Skip Barber firsthand. One of the very first cars put into iRacing was the Skippy 2000, a very small open-wheel type car, and in large part, when it comes to learning the physics of motorsport, you've got to drive one of these machines yourself. And iRacing's real-time training data, in large part, came from that experience in Skip Barber. Their racing schools are all throughout the country, from notably a facility held in Alabama. They've used Lime Rock Park up in Connecticut, and even with a location now in Long Island, New York, they've got a lot to talk about when it comes to their reputation as one of the most renowned organizations in sim racing and motorsport as a whole. Right now, Nick Stathis doing a good job, but he hasn't quite gotten the pace up there with Tyler King. Tyler going to be in that 10th seed coming in, and currently, it looks like he's got himself leading the way up and ahead, 3 in out of 9. Look back to Andrew Davis. He's in number 31 for fastest lap. Team affairs are going to be a little bit less noticeable now. Rodolfo Vargas has effectively lost a teammate for Sim Racing Chicago. Fastest lap does have 3 drivers here tonight, and as it stands, Adam Billings is going to be running for Drive Sims and will reflect that change immediately. Andrew Davis right now with fastest lap, Billings, Martinez, and Bial. So Drive Sims is going to have themselves a multitude of drivers, of course, and of course, as the night goes on, we'll see how many of them last. 4 laps in, out of 9, Billings is in 6th, Rodolfo Vargas is in 5th, Gerard Davis is in 4th, and right now Davis sits on the transfer spot. Take a ride on board right now with Vargas and we'll see what's going on. And right now, as we've seen from every driver running 4th place, there is no real incentive to be overly aggressive. Bide your time. Be patient. Remain in that spot. That's all you got to do right now. 4 laps in and a 9, and as time progresses here, well, laps are going to be coming down the order, and there's going to be less and less reason to go for it. Andrew Davis in that number 31, finding himself here, running content in 8th, but that's going to mean he's going to go down to that last chance qualifier. Reminder, 8 drivers will make it in from the last chance qualifier, 4 from each heat for a 20 driver feature. Of course, focus is going to be on those first top 5 based on qualifying position. Chris Wetz right now for Oasis Sim Racing, finding himself up and ahead, and we're being asked about the 3rd Oasis driver, and I believe based on timing in these heats, well, Chris is that 3rd man. For the number 30 right now, he rounds out the podium, and he's just ahead of Gerard Davis. Rodolfo Vargas, though, has a chance to break in. 3 of his teammates already, well, they've made their way through. Now the pressure's on to be that 4th. For Gerard Davis, of course, pressure's on not to make us mistake. You cannot replicate what we saw in Heat 2. That's just, of course, not a good attitude to go about it with so much aggression in this heat, but also, you just can't afford to lose that track position. Side by side now, looks like Davis will look for a pass on Chris Wetz. Chris stays up high. Gerard decides to dive down low. 3 wide for Vargas. He's going to have to give, and luckily everyone else thinks of it the exact same way. Almost looked like a send he would go in deep for. Luckily, it looks like Gerard Davis pulled away, and it looks like, well, Chris Wetz had to pull out of that one, and so everyone gets away scot-free, but Davis, well, he saw it right there in the rearview mirror. Vargas was not afraid to lunge in, but he thinks better of it on that final charge out. And the difference between, of course, setting up the move and going for it is major. We almost saw what could have been a huge wreck there. There's not a lot of room through the apex of the corners to go double wide or even 3 wide here. Don't expect drivers to do that frequently unless they are absolutely as desperate as it gets. And of course, there's desperation to even make it into the main feature. Can you imagine what these drivers will do for $1,600? I'm sure we all know it's going to be exciting to watch. The question becomes, of course, are they going to play nice? 6 laps in and a 9, coming to lap number 7 here. The field is spread by 53 seconds. Every driver is on the lead lap, including Ryan O'Connor. Despite the incident, Ryan has been able to take himself down a pit road, get some optional repair, and put himself back together. Ryan has a 5105 road I rating with a safety rating of 4.31. So compared to most other drivers on the surface, Ryan is in the top 5% in road racing. So he knows his way around. Unfortunately, that incident goes to show early incidents can really warp the way you race. Ryan's got nothing else to race for right now, just waiting and biding his time for what could be a mistake. Chris Wetz in 4th, Gerard Davis up to 3rd, Rodolfo Vargas is still 1 second back. And this would be the first and only heat in which Sim Racing Chicago fails to put a driver in from the main race. Vargas is in 5th, O'Connor is in 10th, 7 laps in at a 9. Single file as we all see them spread out further and further across 2.45 miles here. We're not going to see many drivers go 1 lap down. In 9 laps, the only real cause for going 1 lap down would be if you went down a pit road for a significant period of time. Over 26, I think we're going to see a different attitude develop for drivers, especially those inside the top 6. Maybe from 3rd to 6th, you'll see drivers a little bit more relaxed, letting the top 2 drivers battle. It depends on the strength of the field up in front. No doubt, though, the best drivers from the earlier heats are going to be locked in once again. This heat has some of our lower-seeded drivers. As a matter of fact, according to the numbers, no driver in this heat is seated above the 10th spot. Tyler King is 10th seed, and he finds himself leading this race. Nick Stathis is 12th seeded, and he finds himself in second here. So, based on the numbers, you might think this is almost a bottom feeder when it comes to the overall pace and the overall seeding. But it doesn't really mean too much, because even if these drivers coming in have that lower seed, now they're racing against each other and getting into the grips with how racecraft will be. And since Watkins Glen is so quick, draft is going to be significant enough where the pace difference will be negligible, especially over those opening few laps. 1 lap to go this time by. White flag is out. Chris Wetz is coming up again on Gerard Davis, but both drivers are going to be comfortably making their way into the main feature. Rodolfo Vargas right now is some 3.5 seconds back, and it looks like there will be no way at all for him to return up into the transfer positions. He will have to go into our last chance qualifier, a 9-lap showing where 8 drivers make it in. So double or nothing for him, quite literally. He's going to have to go to a race where it might be easier by the numbers, but you're going to see a lot of hungry drivers looking for that chance. Half a second separates right now Nick Stathis and Tyler King, and King right now is up ahead. Super Lap would be able to collect their second victory in the 2 heats, of course. So we saw Heat 1 was theirs. Heat 3 will be theirs. Sim Racing Chicago winning what was in between. And right now, the best 2 teams, clear as day, SRC and Superlap. Coming across the final 2 turns, this will be their second win as an organization, and they will put their 4th driver into the main event with another very strong result. Checkered flag flies for Tyler King, winning Heat 3, and he will collect the 3rd place in qualifying. He'll be starting on the 2nd row, alongside Matt Busa. So of your top 4, 50% of which will be Superlap. And then, of course, you have Sim Racing Chicago making up an additional 25%. Now, it's going to be 50-50 because, of course, number 2, Nate Olson, 1 Heat 2. Matt Busa starts 4th. The big 2, those teams are going to be lined up 1st through 4th. Checkered flag flies on your 3 heats. And so now, it's time to move on to your last chance qualifier. 9 laps. 8 make it in. It's double or nothing as we previously described it, and this is the last chance any driver has to enter the feature event. 29 drivers have entered, 20 will make it into the main. A prize pool of $4,000 awaits if you make it in. We're going to find out who goes home very soon here as we get set to roll one last time before our main race. This is going to be composed of some 16 drivers, so about 50% of the field are going to make it in. Although it looks like, for tonight's purposes, this is going to be an even shorter consolation than expected. We're looking at what will be only 3 laps. So talking about upping the ante, well, as a result of our new session, we're going to see an even more intense race. 3 laps? About 7.5 miles here. This is going to be intense. 8 drivers make it into the feature, but qualifying is going to dictate almost everything. Again, let's go through who's here to determine who's got the advantage. Freddie Toth for fastest lap has the pole position. Raphael Freelander for the flying lap will be on the outside front row. Then you have Rodolfo Vargas for Sim Racing Chicago. A little bit further back from there, you're going to have 4th place in Andres Luna for Circuit Sim Racing. Nicky Hayes is in 5th for Circuit Sim. Adam Billings is in 6th there as well. Then you have Jack Freeman for Send It Sim Racing. Dan Shung with Circuit Sim. Tully Fisher with the flying lap. Mitchell Huey, the one and only for Gripworks. And Will Salisbury for Drive Sim in 11th. Then you got Holden Rowe, Mark Rivera, Lee Martinez, Ryan O'Connor, Kevin Beal, and Andrew Davis. Honestly, track position heavy. If you're inside the top 8, high likelihood you make it in. No guarantees, no promises, just 3 laps. And what a set of 3 laps they will be. It's do or die time right now for Freddie Toth and company. He's going to have to get the jump here to escape the madness. Green flag's out. 3 wide already. Make it 4. What a pass. Unbelievable. Up at the front of the field. They're already shuffling major. Talk about that move. Race leader Lee Martinez from the back of the field on up. Spinning in the back already. What a start from Lee Martinez. Unbelievable. Are they going to penalize him for that one? I don't know. We got to take a replay on that. Did you see the way he started from a 4 wide start to take the lead? Wow. And to all who bore witness, Lee Martinez did the unthinkable. Whether or not they penalize him for that one, that's the question. That was an amazing start, and that might be the move of the session so far. He's now leading the way, and with only 2 laps to go when we cross the stripe, Lee Martinez gets as lucky as can be, because if he set anyone off there, he would penalize beyond belief. Matter of fact, they might have thrown him out the seat if he did that, and anyone else got caught up, but he's winning. Unbelievable. 2 laps to go. Freddie Toth in second, Nicky Hayes in third, Andres Luna in fourth, and Jack Freeman in fifth. Something you might have never seen before. And they're reviewing the start to determine whether or not Lee Martinez was caught up in any incident. Mind you, the penalties are typically iRacing awarded. So if iRacing did not award him a penalty, he should be good to go. Mark Rivera holds the transfer spot in the 8th place now. He'll be the 8th and final driver to make it in. Ryan O'Connor for Sim Racing Chicago right now finds himself in 9th. And for, of course, the Sim Racing Chicago team, they'd love to send 2 more drivers in, but that won't be happening tonight. Rodolfo Vargas was part of the initial struggles and comes down to pit road. That will be his race. Additionally, Ryan O'Connor now needs a miracle with just over a lap remaining, and Mark Rivera more than a second out of sight. It looks like Oasis Sim Racing will be able to put 1 more driver in, and Sim Racing Chicago might have to settle for only 3 of their 5 drivers entering the feature. Lee Martinez down a pit road. It will be an illegal start call, and Martinez is out. That will give Ryan O'Connor the transfer spot, and loose. White flags out. Trouble further back. Martinez is going to end up in further trouble, and Andrew Davis now falls out of the top 8. He gets loose out of the Go Bowling Bridge. Now it's going to be Holden Rowe up to P8 here, and teammates will have to scuffle for the last spot. Lee Martinez will be penalized for that start, and it could have caused a ruckus. Luckily, the only driver who was involved in that one will eventually be himself. Holden Rowe is up to 8th. Ryan O'Connor is in 7th. Mark Rivera is in 6th. So Freddie Toth, as a result of that chaos, will be the winner of this heat if he just hangs on. 8 drivers will make it in. Andres Luna and company will battle for second here. There is no incentive now to go for position. Just lock yourself in and go from there. Holden Rowe looks to be comfortable now in 8th, and it looks like we now know who will be part of your starting grid for tonight. Freddie Toth will round the final corners, and even though he didn't lead to start this one, he'll lead to finish. Toth will win the last chance qualifier against all odds, and despite the penalty, the 24 comes away scot-free. Andres Luna in 2nd, Jack Freeman in 3rd, Nicky Hayes 4th, Will Salisbury in 5th, Mark Rivera 6th, Ryan O'Connor in 7th, and Holden Rowe is the 8th and last driver to make it through. And talk about unprecedented. When there's so much on the line, when there's $1,600 on the line, you can imagine drivers are going to do anything. And that was a perfect example. So the checkered flag is going to fall on this event, and we are just moments away from our main feature. Reminder, you're watching Virtual2Reality TV, presented to you live on FTN Broadcasting, eMustang Series National Finale from Watkins Glen International in Watkins Glen, New York. We'll be right back after our final message from our friends at iRacing Motorsports Simulations, the pioneer for online motorsports since 2008. We'll return right after this as our top 20 drivers are now locked in. We'll have 5 minutes of practice and then your starting grid coming right up. Thank you for tuning in on V2R.TV. We'll return right after this.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Since we have a little bit of time to fill here, and since we were given that request, take a look at how that last chance qualifier start came to be at the tail end of the field here. You're watching with Lee Martinez as all got a little bit too intense. This is Heat 2, mind you, so let's pull it back up to that last chance qualifier and show you what it was all about to begin this one. Now, unbelievable start it was, and there's no question of that. This is the pace lap, and we're watching now with Lee Martinez. We're going to try to watch with the eye in the sky here to give you a better view of exactly what happened. So taking a look overhead, and this is a little too far out, this is what it looked like up ahead of the number 17. Lee Martinez, I mean, what a jump that was. 4 wide once, twice, 3 times. It was a miracle nobody else got directly involved, but that just cannot happen. And the penalty will be awarded as a result of that incident, and luckily nobody else got really carried away and caught up in it, but for Lee Martinez, that's what ends his event. Impressive, yes? Definitely not what we want to see, especially because of how risky and dangerous that maneuver was. Super Lap has to be feeling quite high and mighty right now. They've got a lot of competitive drivers that have all made it in, 4 of which are going to find themselves starting inside of the top 10. For Super Lap, of course, unfortunately, we don't have any word from them in our communication server, but they're making an impact, and right now they're taking their final laps. 2 minutes remaining. You've got, of course, up at the head of the field, Tyler King, Paul Darling, and Kevin Rold. Nicky Hayes going to be 4th, and Dakota Fripp now going to find himself 5th, but that's tentatively speaking. One minute and 45 seconds remaining as it stands, and it looks like time's still running out. You got Matt Busa right now on the circuit. Sim Racing Chicago going to be right there with. SRC is bringing 3 drivers into this main feature. So for them, unfortunately not going to bring the full 5, but that strength in numbers allows them a little bit of wiggle room. Here's Daniel Simpson. They're going to bring 4, as a matter of fact. Daniel, of course, making it through. Ryan O'Connor makes it through on the last chance qualifier. And then, of course, you've got the final of the drivers for SRC who actually won their heat, and that, of course, Nate Olson. So 4 of 5, very successful there. 4 drivers for Super Lap as well. It's going to come down to the teams that are the titans of this campaign. Qualifying, open qualifying, the heats and last chance qualifier have led us up to this. $1,600 for your race winner. Then from there, $1,000 for your second place finisher. Third place, $600. Fourth place, $400. Fifth place, $240. And sixth, last of which, to get prize money tonight, $160 overall. Tyler King is the fastest driver in this session. He ran a 107.826. Dakota Fripp gets up to P2 here, and I think right now, more than anything else, drivers just want to be comfortable with the way they've been driving. Get themselves back into the rhythm. If you raced only in Heat 1, it's been about a half hour since you got back into the hot seat. So now, you just got to get your seat warm, get a few more laps in, get those reps together, and it'll be time to go racing for the big money. Checkered flag is going to fall on our final practice session of the night, and Tyler King, quickest time, 107.826, and I think now it comes down to Super Lap versus SRC. Tyler King up there with his teammates, once again one of the fastest in this session, and so practice and qualifying have concluded. No more warm-ups. No more practice. This is it. $4,000 in the prize pool on the line for 26 final laps of racing. Over 10,000 laps have been collected across the country, over 10 sim centers. In addition, seen the best of the best make their way in. 30 drivers had that chance to qualify, and now 20 of which have made their way to the main. Paul Darling will have the overall pole position. With them, then you're going to see Nate Olson and Tyler King, P3. Matt Busa 4th and Cullen Brown 5th, with Nick Stathis in 6th, Russell Soto 7th, Dakota Fripp in 8th, Jared Davis in 9th, and Kevin Rold, P10. Starting grid overall, it has changed quite a lot from the fast laps taken early. As you can see, Paul Darling, he set the fastest lap. He won his heat, and now he has the overall pole position. Super lap and SRC are 1-2, but in the mix, we still have more than 8 sim centers represented. Oasis as a top 5 starter in the form of Cullen Brown. Nick Stathis is 6th for Skip Barber. That's enough time that we've taken to explain to you what's exactly going to happen here. This is it. And we've asked ourselves the same question all night long. How are these drivers going to perform with $1,600 on the line? Let's find out now. iRacing official pace car will say goodnight. Paul Darling will be your race leader, and for the final time, Barney the Flagman will wave the green. 26 laps for $4,000. Green flags back in the air in Watkins Glen. This is for the money, and Paul Darling will lead the field in. Major contact already. Is that going to be a yellow flag? Yes, it is. Caution due to be out, and it looks like already a major slowdown. Cautions are going to fly. No faster pairs appear to be available. Is the yellow flag officially out? No. Green flag still prevails. Looked like the yellow flag would be signaled, but already Super Laps Kevin Rold, done and done. Huge wreck. Take a look at what happened. And already before we put our attention on the race leaders, we see a massive wreck to kick things off. Taking a look further back here, here's Kevin Rold, and he's one of many involved. This will end his night. Green flag will remain, yellow flag not going to be called, and you can see hooked right up the track. Kevin Rold with Jared Davis, 1-2 involved, and then coming back in, looks like Jack Freeman barely going to escape it. And then from there, a few other drivers get caught up, but a huge wreck. Jared Davis caught up in that one, and you saw Kevin roll. Caution does not fly. We stay green, as it looks like every other driver gets away. Paul Darling leading, then Nate Olson in second, Tyler King third, Matt Busa in fourth, Cullen Brown fifth, Nick Stathis in P6. That was a very tricky instance there for those drivers having to navigate through, and as such, Paul Darling right now going to recoup the losses, and he finds himself now race leading. Superlap facing some early troubles where right now their top drivers in qualifying remain as top drivers in race. Nate Olson maybe now going to be taking that captain's helm for Sim Racing Chicago. He finds himself now in a little bit of an SRC sandwich as he has Superlap on top and below him all at once. Olson now coming up rather quickly on Paul Darling, and you gotta wonder now, what will that level of aggression be in these early laps? We still have 20-some laps to go to determine who's got the pace to win this one. Pit road should not be a factor tonight. Keep that in mind. These drivers will go straight on from flag to flag without having to consider going down a pit road. Nate Olson going to find himself, of course, here leading the way, second place. He's got himself leading his team, that is. Paul Darling, Tyler King going to be first and second for Superlap. Then from there, you'll see the remainder of the sim race coming together. Cullen Brown is going to be leading Oasis, and Skip Barber, well, Nick Stathis finds himself in sixth. And we mentioned Stathis maybe not one of the top-seeded drivers, but so far he has gotten the way in the lead pack, and that doesn't look to be a fluke. He finds himself right behind Cullen Brown, and he has that pace. Looks like he's going to keep himself connected for the time being. Darling and Nate Olson, though, already battling and taking it right up high as they enter the Jackie Stewart grandstands. Nate Olson looking for a move, can't quite get the switchback, but already looking for that clean air. Olson will not be all too patient, especially in those final few laps. Contact with the final safer barrier gonna be just barely avoided, and so we keep on going. Single file all the way out right now. 8 drivers within that prize pool realm. Last of which right now, well, it's going to be Russell Soto in the number 3. Russell finds himself just behind Dakota Fripp. Fripp winning a free oil change at Ford, as we mentioned previously, one of our already pre-existing prize winners, getting the job done at Vista Ford for the fastest lap, ran on the last day a 107.951, his fastest lap in the race, about a tenth of a second off of that number. Meanwhile, Paul Darling still going to lead Nate Olson and company through. Tyler King is 3rd, Matt Busa is in 4th. 4 laps in out of 26, and we mentioned at the very top of this show that Matt Busa has some experience beyond the Coke Series in professional sim racing, and some of which comes down to endurance in the VRS GT iRacing World Championship. Competing for 2 years, Matt Busa did alongside Nick Ottinger, Michael Johnson, and Brandon Buey. He didn't get the best of results overall in the championship with a season high of 20th place. However, Busa has been in the position before against the very best in road course racing. Right now he finds himself in 4th. For SRC, Colleen Freeman rooting, of course, for Jack right now. As it stands, Jack going to be P13, just a few spots out on the threshold for some points and some cash prizes. 6th place, the last driver to get a prize right now. That's Nick Skathis, and of course, Stathis looking to come away with $160 if he stays in the position he is right now. Skip Barber with 1 driver and eligible for the prize pool. Cullen Brown, Oasis, 1 driver for them. Then you got the 2 and 2 mix-up. Super lap right now leading 1st and 3rd. 2nd and 4th remains Nate Olson and Matt Busa alike. And hanging tough so far, really no problem for either of these drivers in Busa or Olson, just staying with Paul Darling and Tyler King. I can't imagine right now we're going to see all too much aggression from these drivers. First and foremost, the progression of the race is going to be significantly different from that of our 9-lap heats. Think of this race as 3 of those heats put together, stacked together, back to back to back. That's exactly what it's going to end up being, not only in race length, but in terms of approach. Maybe in the first heat, you saw those drivers a little bit less aggressive. The second heat, you saw those tendencies of risky racing come out, and the third heat in Constellation specifically, it was all out. There was absolutely no holds barred. And Chris Miller in the chat room mentioning next event, North Carolina race mode. Going to be competing at Laguna Seca with the GT3s again. And if you want to join the fun, well, this is going to be an expanding project all throughout the country. You're watching one of the very first virtual to reality events all throughout the United States and even into Canada next month in October. 16 sim centers representing the states and Canada as a whole will come together for $10,000 in prizes, courtesy and part of iRacing Motorsports simulations and the wonderful sim centers all throughout the United States, including all those that have participated today. Once again, want to give the strongest of shout outs to all those who have helped us out. Gritworks in Redmond, Washington, Concord, California's Drive Sims, Woodland Hills Circuit Sim Racing, Oasis Sim Racing in New Braunfels, Texas, The Flying Lap in Springfield, Missouri, Algonquin, Illinois, Sim Racing Chicago, My Fastest Lap, well, that's just the fastest lap, Evansville, Indiana, Berkley, that's going to be Minnesota, Super Lap, Skip Barber Racing in Holbrook, New York, and Send It Sim Racing, Getzville, New York, all of which have come together to help us out in putting this show on tonight, and we, of course, can't do it without them. Right now, the race lead has been pretty tame. Nate Olson has been close, but really has not shown any signs of trying to make a pass. I think that's honestly the way it's going to be for these first 10 to 15 laps, if not more. Many a driver have so far disconnected tonight, but most of which are those who are not eligible from the very beginning. Most others, yes, they still remain on the track. Even looking further back to guys like Andres Luna right here, who's coming up on just ahead of him, that number 26 of Nicky Hayes. Even if these drivers aren't not necessarily in contention for the race win, keep on going. There is no reason not to. The championship of of course, is one and only one race. 26 laps. You just got to keep on going here because anything could happen. Maybe the drivers ahead of you, yes, maybe all of them end up in an incident. That is not unprecedented. It has happened before. David Kreutz in the chat room asking about whether or not this is an open setup or restricted race. Fixed setup. Every driver has the same equipment, same car, of course the same track, and the same exact setup. The only differences are in the physical realm, where drivers are in their sim centers, 10 sim centers across the country participating over 8 states. No difference on the virtual level, same setup, same car, same track. The only difference comes, of course, to the driver and where they're located right now. Chicago, of course, going to be prominent with Sim Racing Chicago, and, of course, the great job that Superlap has done so far in Berkley, Minnesota. Two completely different locations, of course, and nevertheless, they're both doing great work up in front. Top 4 occupied by these big 2 teams. Cullen Brown going to be 5th, and then you got Nick Stathis there in 6th. The leading driver for New York is going to be Stathis, and right now, Cullen Brown is the leading driver for Texas. The entire state right now represented by Cullen Brown. He's done a great job of that. Meanwhile, battle for the lead is side by side. Nate Olson up high. Paul Darling is going to be right there with contact, sliding right through the S's, and now a chance for Tyler King to make it 3 wide for the lead. In addition, Matt Busa coming through, but Tyler King, he makes room where there was none. Now a new race leader. It's the number 10 of Tyler King. Matt Busa makes it ahead now of Paul Darling. And SRC is now trying to put themselves together for a run against the number 10. Talk about a great move from Tyler King. That is move of the race, and it elevates him up to the top spot. Now Matt Busa is going to be right behind where he'd love to be with Nate Olson. Wonderful job there for Tyler King. And talk about high stakes, talk about the intensity of this race, and we mention again what these drivers will do for the money. That's a perfect example. A great move, a clean move, and an expert's decision to find the gap and make use of it. Wonderful job as you see Tyler King as the leader. Take a look again with an instant replay on exactly how he got the job done, just shooting through 3 wide middle, and so the lead will be his. For the first time tonight, it is Tyler King up and ahead, and we're going to take a look, of course, back to the main feed. He's got it ahead now of Nate Olson and Matt Busa alike. It's the best spot that Busa's been in all night long, up to 3rd from that start of 4th. And now Sim Racing Chicago is put together again. While net positive, of course, for Tyler King. Not quite sure if that was a positive move overall for the team at Super Lap. They were up there in 1st and 3rd, but now they are 1st and 4th. It's a driver swap, but we'll see whether or not it's a really potent driver swap. One driver did spin out there that we saw at the tail end of our frame, and we're trying to figure out who that was, although it looked like, very briefly, it might have been Dakota Fripp. And Fripp, yes, is the one who got loose, but did not spin. Dropped 4 positions overall, and as you can see, Dakota is still running. Attention back to the front of the field, though, because things are getting very close here. And for Sim Racing Chicago, Nate Olson and Matt Busa now have a chance to work together. Keep in mind that we mentioned that Super Lap does not have any driver communications in our V2R communication center. However, Sim Racing Chicago is the exact opposite. The entire team is communicating with one another as we speak. They've got it put together very well, and now they're coming up against some lappers here. Tyler King, very loose, and now everyone gets held up big. Matt Busa has no choice but to go up high, and the carousel will not be kind to Busa. Paul Darling now getting a chance. And the lap traffic is going to make its impact. The driver ahead right now is going to be Holden Rowe, one of the last driver to make it in. Now you've got Holden Rowe holding up the field. Let's see what happens up next. Superlap's number 10 machine still leads the way. Then you got Nate Olson in 2nd, Matt Busa in 3rd. For the qualifying event, cleanest, fastest lap counted, by the way. So these drivers had to make sure they were not only fast, but that they were clean. Side by side, Tyler King now going to be right there with Nate Olson once again. This time it looks like Olson might have the advantage on the exit of the S's, and that he will. Turned! Nate Olson is turned! Matt Busa is as well! The big 4 all go up in flames! 1, 2, 3, 4. All of your winning contenders are destroyed. New race leader. This is unbelievable. It looks like tentatively Stratus is second. Andres Luna is leading for Circuit Sim Racing. Busa's out. Darling's out. King is out. And also Nate Olson in one foul swoop. Are you kidding me? Take a look again. We're going to replay this one because this is critical. The 4 favorites for the race wreck at the exact same time. And the pressure just got to all of them at the very same time indeed. Sim Racing Chicago, Super Lap. Talk about disappointment for both camps. And it looks like both drivers looking for the same room. I think they're very slightly King going down into Olsen, then Busa gets contact, and then comes up the track again. Both are sliding. Busa gets caught that second time, and the number 4 of Paul Darling applies the finishing hit to Busa. Olsen applies the finishing hit to Tyler King. Talk about chaotic. 13 laps in at a 26. And that is it for all 4 of those drivers. They're down at pit road. That is their night. Cullen Brown leads. Nick Stathis is now in second. Daniel Simpson is in third. And it looks like the battle prevails there. Now, it looks like Matt Busa is not laying the blame on any of the drivers in particular. According to our private driver communications, it looks like drivers are not happy with how that wreck went overall, but perhaps it wasn't direct contact. That remains to be seen, and we'll digress on that point because it looks like that's something that drivers are going to discuss amongst each other. Straying from the incident, Cullen Brown, the number 29, leads the way. Nick Stathis is going to be in second. Will Salisbury is going to be in third. This is a huge shift up. Super Lap is not going to be inside of the top 3. Sim Racing Chicago is inside of the top 5, and now up to 4th. Quick move there for Dan Simpson, gets him up in a P4. Now is his time to shine. Maybe a chance now to come back in the second half of this race and avenge his fallen teammates. 13 laps to go for a chance at $1,600. Talk about Cullen Brown and Oasis Sim Racing, though, clearly not to be the accepted, of course, expected favorites. Well, now, Cullen, avoiding the attrition, is the man on top of the board. He came through second in his heat, and all of a sudden, it looks like Cullen Brown has himself a chance at victory lane and one of the biggest prize pools in all of iRacing. He might be the grand winner of all of which, $1,600 there. That's, of course, if he hangs on. A dozen laps to do it. Nick Stathis remains further on back. Will Salisbury in third. Dan Simpson up to 4th. And then you see Chris Wetz in P5. Oasis Sim Racing now is the dominant team, representing Oasis. 2 drivers in the top 5. Super Lap is still going to be competing strongly. They've got Dakota Fripp right there with. Then you see Jack Freeman. Even though they're going to be up there in the leading pack, it also looks like those are some of the lappers who were previously involved. Jack Freeman for Send It has been able to make it up into P7 here, and because of that attrition, even though Jack was involved in that Heat 1 wreck more than an hour back now, it looks like he's now only 1 position away from maybe getting a cash prize out of this one. And talk about a success for him. Well, 1 more spot would make it a surefire success. That remains to be seen whether or not, of course, he gets there. We'll watch the battles now for all those who are competing for cash prizes. 6th place is $160. 7th is nothing. There's a huge difference between 6th and 7th, and that's like victory and defeat in itself for these drivers. I'm sure if you're on the bleeding edge of making it up in a 6th, you're going to keep on fighting for it here. Do not expect that aggression to decrease. Instead, expect for those drivers up and ahead maybe to be a little bit more conservative. Cullen Brown now has a 4-second lead on Nick Stathis. So with that being said, I would be very, very surprised if he's going to push himself lap after lap and continue to go forward as if he has something to gain. He's already in the position that everyone wants. Why risk it here? I don't think there's any real incentive to, because if he goes over those curves a little bit too hard, if he ends up sliding out of control, there's nothing more that can be done, and that would end his night, and it would be just about the most crushing way to lose it, short of what we saw there for both Busa and Olsen alongside Tyler King and Darling there. 4 drivers who were leading the way and dominant to start. They're all out. And so now 16 laps in out of 26. This is what it's all come down to. Dan Simpson going to be in 4th, Chris Wetz in P5 there. Will Salisbury going to be up and ahead in 3rd. Nick Stathis is still 2nd, although it looks like he's lost a little bit of time, lap over lap. Currently P2 here for Skip Barber in Long Island. It looks like still leading the way, Oasis up and ahead. Cullen Brown's gap has slightly extended, 4 flat seconds with 10 laps to go. He cannot give up what he has so far, and everything else behind is exactly what he'd love to see. Lap traffic maybe blocking off some of those leaders, trying to chase them down. Big gaps, and maybe now drivers are going to be less confident to push. You've gained so many positions by not pushing and letting everyone else around you make mistakes. Why would you fall for the same mistake of driving aggressive? I think that's exactly what these drivers expect. They're not going to be all too pushy with the way they approach this race, and instead, now for the final 10 laps, be a little bit more conservative. Chris Wetz is in 5th right now. Dakota Fripp is in 6th. Jack Freeman there in 7th. Freeman right now finding himself on the bleeding edge of maybe getting a cash prize, but I think right now he's going to need a mistake up and ahead of him. Last lap for Jack, a 109.409, so he was about a half a second slower than someone like Dan Simpson, but he was a full second slower than Paul Darling here, who's just up ahead of him, and also a full second behind Dakota Fripp. Unfortunately for Paul Darling, yes, he's back on the track, but he's not going to be on the lead lap. Andres Luna is the first driver 1 lap down, running in 11th. Only 10 drivers remain right now on the lead lap here. So even if something happens, very few drivers are eligible to sort of pick up the pieces and ascend to the throne. Even if you're still on the track, doesn't mean you've got an immediate chance to gain. You have to be on that lead lap as well. Right now, Will Salisbury coming up closer on Nick Stathis. Take a ride on board now with that number 22. We'll see what's going on as Will gets even closer to that second spot. $1,000 if you finish in 2nd, so it's a very, very desirable position, as is the race win. The difference between these two drivers has been marginal all night long, but slowly but surely I think that Nick Stathis is falling into the grasp of the number 12. And Stathis right now running a great race. For all that we've seen from Stathis, he came in as the 12th seed. So to see him up here in 2nd, running up against some of the best in the field, it is a wonderful surprise. A lot of great surprises in this field. 22nd seed, Will Salisbury finding himself now in 3rd. Those seed numbers aren't definitive, but they definitely have laid the foundation. They have been the guideline all throughout this entire campaign from open qualifying on, but now the best drivers who are up and ahead now, they're sort of defying it. Of the top 10 drivers, only one of them is a top 10 seed. That's Mark Rivera right now. He's in 9th place. He came in as seed number 5. Unbelievable, of course, for the number 5 team, Mark Rivera. He's still doing a good job, yes, but it's a shock that he is, of course, the highest seeded driver from Oasis. So it's shocking to see that he's not the one who's leading, but instead Cullen Brown is. 7 laps to go. Oasis is on the verge of a double top 10. Nick Stathis here is still trying to hang on for $1,000, and I think Will Salisbury is now just behind, understanding this is it. 7 laps to go. At some point, he's got to make a move. Vincent Williams in the chat room rooting right now for the driver, of course, running in 2nd. Nick Stathis here. Thank you, Vincent, for stopping by. Andre Castro, Samurai, Colleen Freeman, Javen Krish, all of which you have been so committed to bringing, of course, the action inside the chat room. And now the action on the racetrack gets more intense. Up high through the bus stop, Nick Stathis with confidence makes it through. Will Salisbury, though, not afraid as well to challenge and maybe put a little bit more offense into the next few laps. That's a sign of things to come. Expect these two drivers to continue to duel until the job is done. Cullen Brown right now, 7 laps to go. And of course, when we come across the line, it'll be only a firm 6. He's got himself the lead. All he has to do right now is not wreck, and he'll have himself $1,600 and an inaugural victory to go with it. sim racing history is in the making here. 10 sim centers across the country, and Oasis now having a chance to crown themselves as the first ever winner of a V2R event. With thousands of dollars on the line tonight, Cullen Brown has decided to go against the approach of doing anything for the money, and instead has done one thing: continuously, lap after lap. He's just been very calm, consistent, and made his way through. He let the attrition take care of itself, and now all the other drivers behind him continue to battle. Right now, the fight to keep on for $1,000, Nick Status again leads through the bus stop. And there's only really 2 opportunities to pass all throughout the track: the bus stop and turn 1. Maybe the carousel if you're really risky, but we haven't seen that high side work, and the S's have been dangerous. I don't think any banked corner is the place to go when it comes to making passes tonight. You gotta be more careful than that. Nick Status runs P2, Will Salisbury comes in 3rd, Chris Wetz is in 4th, and Dakota Fripp is in 5th. Dakota right now looking to double up on prizes, getting that free oil change, and now looking for an additional 240. Not a bad day for the number 11 team, the final driver to qualify in on the last day of qualifying, and has made a big impact since. I would not be surprised to see Dakota as one of the many drivers for Circuit Sim Racing attempting another event. Right now, P5 on the back end of Chris Wetz. Wetz right now running in 4th. 3 drivers in the top 10 for Oasis here. Chris Wetz just outside the podium. And again here you can see Salisbury on the back end of Nick Status. Side by side changes quick, because right now Dakota Fripp is up in the 4th, making a quick pass on Chris Wetz, sending him back 1 spot and putting him in P5. The last driver now with the prize, well, that would be 6th place for Dan Simpson, the only driver still standing for the entire SRC operation. 5 laps to go for Sim Racing Chicago, and unfortunately their top 2 drivers, well, they fell out very early as a result of a multi-car incident. Now the big question becomes, what can Dan Simpson do to hold up his end of the bargain and keep things going for Sim Racing Chicago? Well, first and foremost right now, he's just got to stay ahead of Mark Rivera. Mark is 13 seconds behind. So when you look at it that way, it's a huge difference. Mark Rivera is almost out of sight for everyone. He's going to find himself 13 seconds behind on Dan Simpson and 35 seconds up on Jack Freeman. So those numbers are huge. And for Mark Rivera, he finds himself out in nowhere. His only hope would be another incident, as we've mentioned before. Now, here's some cause for risky racing side by side in the bus stop. And this time around, well, Nick Status is going to have to give in. He'll let Will Salisbury go through the bus stop and take 2nd place. Status now drops down into 3rd, and that will give Will Salisbury the shot in 2nd to make it up and ahead again. 4 laps to go, and just like that, Will Salisbury finds himself in the catbird seat for victory. 5 seconds back on Cullen Brown, and right now Cullen still looks as good as ever. Last time by was a 109.167, so he's running about a second off of his qualifying time, and 25 plus laps in. That is not a bad margin from first lap to last lap in the slightest. Cullen is quick, simply put, and now he's putting it in together. He is in his element, and now it looks like there's a lapper of Nicky Hayes coming onto the circuit here. Hopefully Nicky does not involve himself with the leaders, and Andres Luna, also a lapper as well, both of which for Circuit Sim Racing. They have no affiliation to the battle for 2nd, and it looks like now Nick Status has given away the chance to hold on to 2nd. Will Salisbury will now lead this draft, and maybe it will be in Nick's best interest to just run in the draft and wait. Bide your time, but Dakota Fripp is coming, and Dakota might take away that 3rd spot. And this is when it becomes very intense. 3 laps to go, coming down to 2. Only 5 miles left in this event. $4,000 the prize pool, and drivers are shuffling spots rapidly. Right now, Nick Status would be due to win $600. If he falls back, he'd be due to win $400. Smoke ahead. That was risky, and luckily nobody else gets caught up. But for Status, I'm sure he'd love a chance to get back again into 2nd, but not a good run out the corner. Dakota Fripp has just gotten closer. Popsicle sticks. 2 laps to go. That's all it comes down to. Team Oasis, they're leading the way. Then you got a multitude of sim centers behind. Circuit Sim has Dakota Fripp, Nick Status is for Skip Barber, and Will Salisbury is for Drive Sim. But right now, that number 29 finds himself alone at the head of the field, and it looks like tonight, Cullen Brown, perhaps one of the quietest drivers in this event, he's going to make the biggest impact and the loudest noise when all is said and done. $1,600 to your race winner. And as it stands, from there on out, nobody else quite gets the exact same prize. Nothing like victory, because it's beyond the money, it's beyond the acclaim, and beyond any of the fame that comes within the sim racing community. It's, simply put, bragging rights to the max. This is history, going up against competitors all throughout the country, and with one lap to go, Cullen Brown has a chance to get the job done uncontested. White flag is out now, last lap in this race. Watkins Glen has given us more than 50 great laps of late racing, from heat racing to the last chance qualifier to this main feature. The fight for second continues to end the prize pool, of course. It'll be Nick Status right now, still chasing after Will Salisbury. Fifth place is going to be now held by Chris Wetz. Dan Simpson is in sixth. Now, Cullen Brown just has to make it through that bus stop, and if he does so, he should be home free. No issue as he makes it through the chicane, now through the carousel again. And Cullen Brown, if he looks in that rearview mirror one last time, he'll know one thing: it is empty. Coming through now, the final two corners from the Jackie Stewart grandstands down to the front straightaway. Brown, quick in qualifying, not the fastest in his heat, but he was the calmest, and cooler heads prevail at the Glen. Under the Gold Bowling Bridge, out of the final turn, and tonight Cullen Brown will be $1,600 richer, winning the eMustang Series National Finale. Cullen Brown is the United States champion from Watkins Glen. Oasis Sim Racing brings together the team of dreams. A first ever win for Oasis on the national stage, and a first ever win for Cullen Brown on the national stage. $1,600 and a victory to remember. Brown wins from upstate New York. Salisbury, Stathis, Fripp, Wetz, Simpson, all of which will collect paychecks tonight in a prize pool of north of $4,000, and almost half of it goes to the man on your screen right now. Tonight, Cullen Brown just had to watch and wait, diving through the wreck that changed this race, where the top four went up in smoke, and that's when Cullen Brown's chances immediately became a certainty. Tonight, Cullen Brown had to face off against championship contenders from California to New York and the country in between. And while Oasis was not the dominant team all throughout qualifying for this event, they're the winning team. And that is all that matters. Looking to continue his celebration, Cullen Brown is about to burn down the house. Why don't we watch the national champion celebrate as he hits the barrier? No burnout for Cullen Brown, but I'm sure he's as excited as ever on the other side of the screen. Checkered flag flying, history in the making, and Cullen Brown wins the National Series finale here in the eMustangs. Brown for Oasis Sim Racing will win from Drive Sim's Will Salisbury and Skip Barber's Nick Stathis. You got then Circuit Sim Racing and Dakota Fripp in fourth, with Chris Wetz P5 and Dan Simpson in sixth. The only driver for Sim Racing Chicago to finish inside of the top 10. Oasis Sim Racing was the most successful team on the night. They were able to get 3 top 10s, Mark Rivera the last of which, and Jack Freeman then in 8th for Send It Sim Racing. Fastest laps, best driver finishes 9th, and Andres Luna finishes in 10th and last. Then from there, you will have 11th place Paul Darling, Russell Soto, Kevin Rold, and Tyler King. Interesting. All 4 Super Lap drivers, 11th to 14th. Top 3 interviews, they are coming soon. Then you've got 15th place Ryan O'Connor, 16th in Holden Rowe, Nikki Hayes 17th, Nate Olson in 18th, Matt Busa P19, and Jared Davis 20th and last. 10 sim centers showed up for tonight's race, 8 of which made the feature, and one far and away dominated your feature race, and they will come away with more than $2,000 in prizes. One man, though, Cullen Brown, will come through with the most of which, winning from Watkins Glen. We're going to get your top 3 drivers organized for interviews, and before we do that, we'll bring you our last presentation from iRacing.com. Stay tuned. We're going to hear from the national champion, Cullen Brown, right after this.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head to head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
We're waiting now for Cullen Brown to stand by with us. Unfortunately, the only thing keeping us waiting is the big man himself, winning and leading 15 laps in out of 26. Cullen Brown is the first driver we're going to try to speak to here, and we're going to get him in immediately. Checkered flag fries for Cullen Brown, and unfortunately, we're waiting a little bit longer for the man who gets the job done. Will Salisbury comes home second, and then, of course, you have Nick Sathis there in third. Hopefully, if Skip Barber is still watching, we can get a word from that number 12 as well. We would love to speak to all of our top 3, and of course, we are going to try and get the job done in getting your winner here first and foremost. What a race there for Cullen Brown. I mean, when it comes down to the race he had, he led more than half the laps, didn't start as your race leader. He started in 5th. And then from there, of course, came away with the victory. $1,600 richer, as a matter of fact. A little bit more about our prize structure. $900 for second, $600 for third, $400 for fourth, $300 for fifth, and sixth and last, $200. So we're waiting now for Oasis Sim Racing to give the final go-ahead to allow Cullen Brown to speak to us here tonight. And that's the only thing now that we've got to wait on. Of course, time will tell. And hopefully time tells rather quickly. Brown, Salisbury, Sathis here. We get the memo. We'll be sure to bring the number 29 in. Checkered flag flying here from Watkins Glen for the eMustang National Series finale. And so, with a little bit of time here, we'd like to, of course, once again thank all the sim centers who made tonight possible from start to finish. Looks like right now, Cullen Brown is joining in with us. We have Will Salisbury join the waiting room and waiting for that final confirmation with Cullen Brown as well. Trying to get that signal here, so we'll give a few shout-outs while we're at it for all the great people who made this event possible. Joel Hamilton of the Virtual2Reality team, Redmond, Washington's Gripworks Racing, Drive Swim, this is in Concord, Carolina, or rather California. Drive Sims getting it done. We're going to see North Carolina in our next event, and if you saw that promo, $10,000 on the line. Woodland Hills, California, Circuit Sim Racing, Oasis, New Braunfels, Texas, The Flying Lap, getting it done, of course, New Braunfels, Texas, Oasis Sim Racing, Springfield, Missouri. That was the flying lap. Sim Racing Chicago, Algonquin, Illinois, Evansville, Indiana, my fastest lap. And it looks like right now, straight out of New Braunfels, Texas, your race winner is with us. 15 laps led, started 5th in the main feature, and at the end of it all, $1,600 richer in the first ever eMustang National Series Championship. Cullen Brown, you are the national champion for 2024.
I mean, it's unbelievable, really. I was already in a money position, so I was just gonna ride, get to the end, but just literally, you couldn't even dream of the scenario that ended up happening. The seas parted, and had a big gap and just held on to it. It just incredible. I'd like to thank Virtual2Reality, Oasis, everybody that put on this event. Oh man, I'm over the moon right now.
And what a win it was, of course, for you, because it looks like, first and foremost, that heat and qualifying, you had speed, and that definitely went your way. So let's talk about that first and foremost. Heat 2, you started on the pole, you ended up finishing in second, ended up getting overtaken as it went on. Can you walk us through the battle you had there with Matt Busa and how it impacted your performance for the rest of the race?
Yeah, in the heat, I didn't really get off to a good start. On the cold tires, I was missing the last couple corners, and I don't know. I probably could have defended a little bit better, but once I got to second in the heat, I just was riding and didn't want to push the issue. We were in a transfer spot. Yeah, and then in the feature, yeah, I was just riding in line behind Busa and didn't really want to, once again, didn't want to push the issue, go side by side and lose the guys in front. So I was just riding, and at some point I was going to start racing, but they all wrecked out of the way and never had to do it. So it just worked out perfectly.
And the seas parted, and from there, you look to be very confident with your pace. Were you at all aggressive with your lap speed? Because it looks like you were pulling away from everyone behind you, but you didn't seem like you were out of control.
Yeah, once I saw that I had a 3.5-second lead, I knew it was my race to lose. I just had to keep it on track. I backed it down just a little bit, especially entering the bus stop. And once I saw that even with that, I was still maintaining and pulling a gap on second and third, I knew I had it.
And from there on out, it seemed like the race was yours. Not only a victory for yourself in that major prize, but also Oasis Sim Racing, where you happen to be stationed out of tonight. How's it been over there in Oasis? Of course, the most successful team on the day, bringing home a triple top 10 and 2 drivers who collect prize money.
Oh my God, everyone here is going crazy. After I won, after I got out of the car, they're all like 10, 15 of them coming in, they're cheering. And Chris Wetz gets 5th. I mean, and Mark getting 10th. I mean, it's just awesome.
And what a way to get it done, not only for yourself here and all of Oasis Sim Racing, but a huge victory on the national scale. Now, we do know that we have some events coming up next. Laguna Seca in October. You think you'll run it back and try to go for some more successes?
With how well this went, I think I just have to.
And we would love to see more, of course, maybe defending the crown. But here in Watkins Glen, you're the champion for 2024. Cullen Brown, winner from the Glen. Any last shout-outs or final messages you'd like to give to the audience?
Yeah, first and foremost, shout out to Chris Wetz for even telling me about this and letting me know. I mean, this is, I mean, if it wasn't for him, yeah, I'd have no idea. And then, and then shout out to Andre Castro back home. Shout out to my family. Shout out to Jack, Juan, if they're watching. And shout out to you guys for putting on the broadcast.
There we go. Cullen Brown leading 15 of 26 in our main feature tonight and collecting the checkered flag, $1,600 richer when all is said and done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys.
And with Cullen Brown on the move, big victory for Oasis Sim Racing and second place tonight. While not able to lead a lap overall, let's talk about Will Salisbury, who comes through from a low of 17th in this main event to hold fort and get the job done for a runner-up feature finish. Salisbury, talk about the improvements that you saw here today from 8th in Heat 2 and starting at the tail end of the field to 2nd overall. Our hard charger and a podium sitter at that.
Yeah, thank you. It was one hell of a night, that's for sure. I had a lot of bad luck in the heat races. You know, I didn't quite qualify where I wanted it to be. I didn't have the pace for the top 5 guys, but I kind of figured I would be around, somewhere in the top 10, but wasn't quite there, and then had a lot of bad luck in the heat races there that put me way back for the feature. Luckily, was able to qualify for the feature, and man, it was just extreme luck, and I think you referred to it as the parting of the Red Seas, is exactly how I felt. I made up a few spots, and once I got up into around 10th, I was just going to be happy with a top 10 finish. But when all the leaders wrecked, to come out on the other side of that in the top 5 was incredible for me. And then, it was on from there to get up into the podium, and we made it happen.
And that you did there. It looks like, of course, that first big incident really set the tone for the main race. But as we did with Cullen, we'd like to ask you first and foremost about your heat, because in all honesty, it didn't end up successful. You got yourself involved in a major wreck at the tail end of it there, and that shot you back in the starting order. Could you walk us through the 9-lap sprint first?
Yeah, absolutely. I was in a good spot in that 9-lap heat race. I started, I think, 5th and made it up into that top 4. So I knew I had to be in that top 4 to transfer in. And, I got shuffled back a couple spots and just started going wheel to wheel racing. And it's so tough to pass here. This track is so quick. Everyone is so tight that you got to make some moves that are very unexpected. And I had flirted with going around the outside of the carousel numerous times in practice and made it stick in the heat race um, to get up into that transfer spot. And unfortunately, the next lap, I had to do some defending because of the draft, just getting into the bus stop. That it put me back on the outside of the carousel, and the guy that I was battling with just came up and took us both out into the wall. And so that ended that run to transfer into the main event in that optimal position. But I just battled back, didn't dwell on it too much. Knew that if I could make something happen in the consolation, that we could get into the feature, and that's exactly what happened.
And everything happens there in that main, making such big moves, and it looks like you did so with confidence, even grasping up to the second position in the final 5 laps. A good battle between you and Nick Stathis there. Was a little bit risky, but I honestly didn't think it was anything too crazy. You seemed to have the pace, and you made it work like so.
Yeah, I was really trying to manage my tires throughout the stint. I knew everyone was going to be pushing very, very hard. And with the tire fall off and getting them hot around here, it's extremely important to make sure that you have the tires under you. And I just did a good job in the first half of the race to make sure that I still had something left for the second half. And once I got up to Nick there, it was some decision making had to go on, whether, we were both in a podium spot. How much do I risk taking us both out of that podium position, especially when we had some guys closing in. But lap after lap, I knew I was quicker than him. I was kind of hoping he'd let me go after I gave him a couple little love taps there, but he put up a good fight and ended up getting the job done, sending it on the outside going into the bus stop, and just had to make it work if we were going to really put on a show. And it was coming down to the wire, and thankfully it stuck. Was able to get in front of him, and it was hoping Colin would have an issue at that point, but honestly, second place feels like a win from where I started. He was 5 seconds down the road, and there was just nothing I could do at that point. But to get up from 17th on the grid just feels like a win for the Send It Sim Racing group.
And you mentioned it, Send It Sim Racing, a great job for this team. And we also noticed 2 drivers here getting it done for New York. And for you, Getzville, New York, Send It Sim Racing. How was it for you racing in Getzville tonight with, of course, your operation?
Oh, it was incredible. Jesse here at Send It Sim Racing in Buffalo, New York, does an incredible job. He's got such a fantastic setup here. I can't thank him enough for being a part of this series and establishing himself in this greater Western New York area. It's incredible to see such a place like this in this area, because racing is not huge around here. So when this place opened, it was surely a shock. So huge shout out to Jesse here at Send It Sim Racing, and to my teammate as well, Jack Freeman. He put up a hell of a fight. He made it into the main as well. We were actually kind of picking our way through the field for a little while together, and was able to work together for a little bit to make up some spots. So huge shout out to Jack Freeman, and just can't thank Jesse here at Send It Sim Racing in Buffalo enough for being a part of this and putting on such a spectacular facility.
And it's great to hear that, of course, New York, well, we're here for Watkins Glen, but it's a big state, and there's a lot of representation around racing, and we're hoping to see a lot more. Will Salisbury, second on the day here. Any final shout-outs or messages you'd like to give?
Yeah, absolutely. Got to shout out everyone that's still watching the broadcast. I know I got some people that I work with at Coforce on Indiana, so thank you guys for watching. Thanks for everyone, family and friends that are also tuning in, and for you guys up in the booth for putting this on and being part of it. Can't thank you guys enough for this opportunity. It's incredible when things like this come together. I know it takes a lot of people, a lot of effort, so I can't thank the promoters enough that have put this on, and you guys in the booth for doing a fantastic job tonight.
Will Salisbury, a great job, of course, moving up from as low as 17th in the main to a high of second place and coming home $900 richer. Thank you again for stopping by.
Cheers, guys.
And with Will Salisbury on the move, we have gotten communication with our third place finisher. However, he has not yet joined into our interview room. So trying to figure out, of course, what's going on, because Nick Stathis has indeed joined us, but no final confirmation as to whether or not he would like to stand by for an interview. Going to communicate one more time, send the message out. Hopefully we can get a word from Stathis, who also puts together another impressive run for Skip Barber Racing. And you can see here, starting from as low as a 6th spot and getting up into as high as 2nd, Stathis comes away with a top 3 finish nevertheless here, and as long as we wait a little bit longer, perhaps Nick Stathis can stop by and give us one final interview. Your top 3, Cullen Brown, Will Salisbury, and Nick Stathis getting the job done here from Watkins Glen. 10 sim centers and 1 podium spot occupied by each sim center here. Love to see the diversity and variety of locations. Buffalo, New York, and then we go down to Long Island, and of course, victory comes down to Texas, and a Texas-sized win at that. Up next, of course, Laguna Seca, $10,000 of cash prizes. We're going to wait a little bit longer here to see if Nick stops by, but if he doesn't, we're going to wrap up with our final thoughts to conclude the night, and of course, we're going to be looking forward to our next event coming in just a month. Let's learn a little bit more about what's up next in store here in V2R. So unfortunately, no final confirmation for the driver of the number 12, Nick Stathis, who finished in 3rd. Nevertheless, you heard from our 2nd place finisher, Will Salisbury, and winner Cullen Brown. The first of many events to come tonight with $7,000 of prizes on the line. The grand prize goes to Cullen Brown, $1,600 richer after a tremendous performance tonight. And Cullen Brown now has that title to defend. For Watkins Glen, he will be this year's champion. But then, of course, Laguna Seca comes next month. Tune in on V2R TV, powered by FTN Broadcasting, throughout the month of October to figure out who comes out as the champion from the twists and turns in California. We've seen many a time Laguna Seca, as exciting as it gets here in New York. Laguna Seca, the Monterey Grand Prix for IndyCar, and as well for IMSA sports car racing. So GT3 action will continue throughout the rest of the year, and we'd hope to see you there. From the virtual Watkins Glen International, you've been watching the eMustang National Championship Series finale here on Virtual2Reality.tv. I've been your host, David Kreutz, commentating and producing, and if you want to find out a little bit more, make sure to leave a like on the stream, subscribe to the channel, and we'd love to learn a lot more about what's going on here with the rest of the season as it goes on. We'd love to have you, of course, along for the ride with us here on FTN and V2R. Thank you for tuning in. We hope to see you for our next event. Stay tuned to all of our social media pages linked in the description below so you can find out when exactly our next event will be and whether or not you can participate. Next event, 16 sim centers across the country, and we'll of course make sure you know where your nearest sim center is. Visit Virtual2Reality.tv for exclusive additional information. Congratulations to Cullen Brown, our champion for 2024, and once again shout out to the simulation centers that help put on the action: Gripworks, Drive Sim, Circuit Sim Racing, Oasis Sim Racing, The Flying Lap, Sim Racing Chicago, Fastest Lap, Super Lap, Skip Barber, and Send It Sim Racing. From David Kreutz and the FTN broadcasting crew and Joel Hamilton and Virtual2Reality's TV team, we thank you for tuning in. Hope you have a great night, and we congratulate again your 2024 Watkins Glen champion, Cullen Brown.